29-year-old Cody Wharf is behind bars and is facing multiple charges following a triple homicide earlier this month. At just before 5 a.m. on the 8th of April, authorities responded to a residence at 2225 Griffiths Avenue in the Portland neighborhood of Louisville, Kentucky on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they entered the home and found a woman and 2 men deceased with gunshot wounds. The victims were identified as 37-year-old Mallory Cox, 49-year-old David Clark and 37-year-old Robert Orta. During the investigation, detectives received dozens of tips with multiple witnesses identifying Cody as a suspect in the case. Police said that Cody was an acquaintance of the victims, but did not disclose further details of their relationship. On the 12th of April, officers spotted Cody's car as he was driving to a house in the 1700 block of Hill Street. At the time, Cody had a warrant for his arrest unrelated to the triple homicide out of Floyd County, Indiana. When detectives attempted to perform a traffic stop, Cody sped away. While driving away from the detectives, Cody crashed into one of their cars and another parked vehicle in the area. After the crash, Cody got out of his car and attempted to run away but was later detained. When officers conducted a search of his vehicle, they found a stolen gun and other items used to manufacture ammunition. During his arrest, Cody provided police with a false name and date of birth. He was also driving with a suspended license and no proof of insurance. On the 23rd of April, Cody was charged with 3 counts of murder, possession of a handgun by a convicted felon, fleeing police, criminal mischief, escape in the 3rd degree, providing false information to police, receiving stolen property and operating a vehicle on a suspended license. Authorities said that Cody has also been convicted on multiple drug charges, battery, resisting law enforcement and theft out of southern Indiana. Cody remains held at the Louisville Metropolitan Department of Corrections on a $1 million bond. Authorities have not stated what led up to the shooting or what a possible motive could be, as the investigation into the matter continues. 38-year-old Daniel Lanks is behind bars for severely beating a man during an unprovoked attack, which left the victim without an eye and a broken jaw. At around 1 a.m. on the 11th of April, the victim was walking near Ace Mini Mark Smoke Shop at 4750 East Broadway Road in Phoenix, Arizona, when he said, "How are you doing?" to Daniel, who responded by saying he would whip his ass. The man kept walking when Daniel came up from behind, stuck his fingers into the victim's right eye socket and pulled out his eye. The victim fell and Daniel punched him in the face multiple times, fracturing his jaw before he managed to get away, and ran home where his girlfriend called 911. When police got to the victim's home, they found him holding his eyeball in a bloody towel. Court documents state that when he was asked to remove the towel, officers observed the victim's eyeball was completely removed from his eye socket, hanging down from his face. The victim stated that during this incident he was in fear of his life and safety, believing that Daniel could have killed him, and stated that the attack was completely unprovoked, and that he didn't threaten Daniel, challenge him, or didn't have any forms of weapons to be perceived as a threat. 3 days later, the victim identified Daniel as his attacker in a photo lineup. At around 2 p.m. on the 14th of April, officers found Daniel in the lobby of a healthcare office at 23rd Avenue, just south of Dunlap Avenue that same day, and arrested him. Authorities said that he swore at the officers and told them to shut up, and that he didn't understand his Miranda rights. Daniel was booked into the Maricopa County Jail and charged with felony aggravated assault. His bond was set at $500,000. Daniel has a history of mental illness, he's homeless, and has a criminal history that includes attacking police, trespassing and stealing. 30-year-old Trevor Damian Norman is behind bars for fatally stabbing his mother. At 1:31 p.m. on the 24th of April, authorities responded to a residence in the 3900 block of Olive Street in Bryan, Texas, after receiving a 911 call by a woman who said her brother was holding a knife to their mother's neck. When police arrived on scene 2 minutes after the call, they encountered Trevor armed with a knife near the driveway of the home. He was immediately detained without incident. When officers entered the house, they found a woman identified as 50-year-old Sylvia Harris suffering from multiple stab wounds. She was transported to a local hospital where she died from her injuries. Authorities said that Trevor admitted to killing his mother after he was taken into custody, but a motive wasn't shared. Trevor is charged with murder and remains at the Brazos County Jail on a $500,000 bond. Family members said that Trevor lived at the home with his mother and he had a history of mental health issues. In 2021, He was arrested on charges of assaulting a gas station employee at 2105 East William J. Bryan Parkway in Bryan, Texas, after pouring lighter fluid on the worker and inside the store. In that case, he was sentenced to a year in jail with time already served. He was released in April of 2024. On the 23rd of April, a grand jury in Lucas County, Ohio indicted 33-year-old Darnell Jones for raping and killing his 13-year-old daughter Kimani Lategue last month. Darnell is charged with aggravated murder, first-degree rape, first-degree kidnapping, second-degree endangering children, third-degree tampering with evidence, and first-degree aggravated burglary and fifth-degree gross abuse of a corpse. If found guilty of murder, Darnell will be eligible for the death penalty. Authorities said that Darnell kidnapped, raped and killed Kimani between the 17th and 18th of March. On the 23rd of March, Darnell was charged with abducting Kimani from a Toledo home where she lived with her grandmother. On the 24th of March, Kimani's body was discovered on the second floor of an abandoned burned-out building at 1101 Miami Street in Toledo, Ohio. Authorities said that she was raped, had her hand severed and her throat nearly cut off. The coroner determined her death to be from multiple deep cuts to her neck and ruled her death a homicide. Darnell was identified as a suspect in a murder. At just after 10 a.m. on the 25th of March, police located Darnell at an intersection in Columbus. An officer got out of his vehicle to confront Darnell about his daughter's murder. He ordered Darnell to show his hands, which were tucked into his hoodie pocket. At that point, Darnell told the officer, "Kill me. Just kill me," as the officer pulled out his weapon. Next, Darnell pulls a gun out from his pocket, prompting the officer to fire multiple shots. Darnell was shot in the arm, leg and left side of his chest. While officials treated his injuries at the scene, Darnell repeatedly told them that he didn't want to live. He was hospitalized and survived. Prosecutors said that Darnell admitted to dragging Kimani involuntarily to an abandoned building and killing her by cutting her neck with a bladed instrument. Darnell remains held at the Lucas County Jail on a $4 million bond. A mother and grandmother are behind bars for allegedly abusing a severely malnourished 12-year-old girl they restrained to a bed and fed cat food. Authorities said the girl weighed 50 pounds when she was rescued from her abusers. The average weight for a healthy 12-year-old girl is around 92 pounds. On the 21st of April, 35-year-old Amanda Lynn Gregorio and 52-year-old Stacey Ann Lauder were arrested at their residence in the Birchwood Estates mobile home park in Exeter, Pennsylvania, and booked in the Luzerne County Jail. They were charged with aggravated assault of a child under 13, conspiracy, unlawful restraint, false imprisonment, endangering the welfare of children, recklessly endangering another person, simple assault and tampering with evidence, months after the girl was removed from custody and placed with the Luzerne County Children, Youth and Families. The agency took custody of the girl on the 4th of September, days after she was brought to a hospital with seizure-like symptoms. Investigators learned that the child's mother, Amanda, had intentionally over-medicated the girl with Benadryl and melatonin prior to the incident. Medical staff said the child had abrasions, bruises and scars from restraints. The girl told investigators she would be restrained in bed for long periods of time and was forced to defecate and urinate in bed. Amanda allegedly told a witness that she fed the girl cat food and blamed her own mother Stacey for making her put the child in restraints. Investigators found the suspects had installed a surveillance camera in the girl's room to make sure that she didn't get out of her restraints. Authorities said that at one point, Amanda smacked the girl in the head with a broom, causing a bump and laceration that Stacey covered with glue. At around the same time, the girl showed up at school with a black eye and told school officials she walked into a wall. After that, the girl stopped attending a traditional school and was instead enrolled in an online school. Amanda and Stacey each remain held in jail on $125,000 bonds. A preliminary hearing is scheduled for the 6th of May. 33-year-old Daniela Raymond is accused of seriously injuring a 9-year-old boy after she allegedly beat him over the head with a kitchen pot because she was angry on how he had done the dishes. At around 6 p.m. on Sunday the 20th of April, authorities responded to a home in the 1300 block of Northwest 111th Street in Miami, Florida on reports of possible child abuse. Upon arriving at the scene, first responders made contact with the child who recounted what took place inside the residence. The victim told police that Daniel had become angry after the child washed the dishes because she did not approve of the way he had completed the task. Daniela allegedly reacted by grabbing a kitchen pot and striking him on the head with it, causing a large laceration to his scalp. Unsatisfied with the extent of the punishment, Daniela then ordered the child to place his hand on the kitchen table. She then used the pot to strike the child's left hand, breaking his middle finger. After striking the child in the head and the hand with the pot, Daniela then used the kitchen utensil to beat him on the arms and back before kicking him in the stomach. Authorities noted that the victim had visible bruising on his arms, back and stomach. On Tuesday the 22nd of April, Daniela was arrested and charged with 1 felony count of aggravated child abuse resulting in great bodily harm, and she was booked into the Turner Guilford Night Correctional Centre where she remains held without bond. The following day, she appeared in court and pleaded not guilty to the charges. The relationship between Daniela and the child is unclear as the investigation into the matter continues. 42-year-old Patricia Ann McConnell was behind bars for killing a partner, 45-year-old Patrick Dalrymple Collins, during an argument. At around 11:25 p.m. on Thursday the 24th of April, Patricia called 911 to report that a man at her home along Lua Road in Pahoa, Hawaii was not breathing. During the call, Patricia told dispatch that she and Patrick were involved in a domestic dispute and he tried to kill her, so she strangled him to death. It's unclear what the fight was about. When officers arrived, they found Patrick slumped over in the driver's seat of a vehicle, not breathing, without a pulse, and his face was purple. Medics attempted life-saving measures, but he was pronounced dead at 11:57 p.m. and Patricia was taken into custody. During the investigation, police discovered a packet containing a white crystalline substance in Patricia's pocket, which was later tested positive for methamphetamine. The following day, an autopsy confirmed the manner of Patrick's death as homicide by strangulation. Patricia was charged with second-degree murder and third-degree promotion of a dangerous drug. She remains held at the East Hawaii Detention Facility on a $1,505,000 bond. 22-year-old Rodney Wood is accused of shooting a fellow 32-year-old Popeyes employee over overcooked biscuits. At around 6 p.m. on Sunday the 11th of May, authorities responded to a Popeyes located at 9501 South Boulevard in Charlotte, North Carolina, after they received a call about an assault with a deadly weapon. When officers arrived, they located the victim in the parking lot of the store with multiple gunshot wounds. He was transported to the hospital with serious life-threatening injuries where he underwent surgery. Authorities said that a customer saw Robert and the victim get into a verbal altercation inside the fast food restaurant due to burnt biscuits. Both men then went outside when the argument turned physical. Rodney had a gun on him and shot the victim twice at point-blank range. One shot hit the man in the groin and the second shot in the chest. Rodney fled the scene following the incident, but police located him nearby. When questioned, he told police that the victim punched him in the face 3 times, causing him to fire 2 warning shots, not intending to kill. Both Rodney and the victim are managers at Popeyes, and they've reportedly had issues in the past. Rodney previously asked to transfer locations because he did not want to work with the victim. Rodney was booked into the Mecklenburg County Jail on 1 count of attempted first-degree murder. A 32-year-old man is accused of drugging and burning a 62-year-old amputee alive in a mobile home for making a comment about a 13-year-old girl. At around 7 a.m. on Saturday the 10th of May, police and fire crews responded to a report of a structure fire in the 200 block of Jim Street in Billings, Montana. Firefighters extinguished the blaze and found a dead body, later identified as 62-year-old Michael Lee Huston, inside the residence. A subsequent autopsy determined that Michael's manner of death was a homicide. However, the cause of death has not been released. Authorities said that the evidence at the scene indicated that foul play was a likely factor in the death. Investigators were able to identify a person of interest and put out a description of the vehicle that the individual was possibly driving. The individual was later identified as 32-year-old James Hosey of Billings, Montana. On Monday the 12th of May, authorities arrested James at the Love's Travel stop near Hardin, Montana, after tracking him down using his cell phone's emergency locate function. Authorities said they were first tipped off to James's possible involvement in Michael's death by a gas station attendant. She spoke to James on the day of the fire, describing him as a regular customer and claiming that he told her that he had tied someone up and then set them on fire. The gas station attendant said that James claimed to have smoked a Predator. James also reportedly phoned a friend in Michigan and told him that he just killed Michael over inappropriate remarks the victim allegedly made about an underage girl. During the call, he said to his friend, so went over there and got him high, on the brink of passing out, tied him up, beat his ass and poured gas in the house and set fire to him. James is charged with 1 count of deliberate homicide, arson, theft and tampering with evidence. On Thursday the 15th of May, James appeared in the Yellowstone County District Court where he pleaded not guilty to the charges. He's currently being held at the Yellowstone County Detention Facility on a $500,000 bond. A 31-year-old man will spend decades behind bars after he killed his mother with a machete. On Wednesday the 14th of May 2025, Jonathan Taylor appeared at the Galveston County Court in Texas and was sentenced to 50 years in prison after pleading guilty to the 2024 murder of his mother, 68-year-old Regina McIntyre. At just before 8 p.m. on the 9th of October 2024, authorities responded to a Wendy's fast food restaurant along Palmer Highway in Texas City, Texas, after Jonathan walked into the store covered in blood and asked staff to call police. When officers arrived, they made contact with Jonathan, who had self-inflicted stab wounds to both his arms, and initially told officers he had been robbed. He was taken to a medical center for the wounds, when he admitted that he attacked his mother at his home in the 2900 block of Tarpey Avenue in Texas City. Police subsequently performed a welfare check on Regina where they discovered a chaotic and bloody scene. She was found on the kitchen floor with severe stab wounds and a machete nearby. She was flown to a hospital in a critical condition, but died from her injuries. An autopsy later revealed Regina sustained at least 25 lacerations from the machete. Authorities said that the blood on Jonathan's clothes and body matched Regina's DNA. During an interview with detectives, Jonathan admitted that he used the machete to kill his mother. A 31-year-old bus rider is behind bars for fatally stabbing a fellow 30-year-old passenger. At around 6:45 p.m. on Wednesday the 14th of May, authorities responded to the 500 block of South Laurel Boulevard in Austin, Texas, after a 911 caller rang to say that someone had been stabbed on a Cap Metro bus. When first responders arrived, they found 30-year-old Akshay Gupta seriously injured with a deep gash to his neck. They attempted life-saving measures, however he was pronounced dead at 7:30 p.m. Homicide detectives interviewed witnesses and learnt that the suspect, later identified as 31-year-old Deepkat Kandal, had been sitting next to Akshay on the bus when, without provocation, he stabbed him in the neck. Once the bus was stopped, Deepak calmly exited the bus with other passengers and left the scene on foot. Police were able to locate and detain Deepak a short time later. During questioning, Deepak admitted to stabbing Akshay due to him resembling his uncle. Deepak's charged with murder and remains held at the Travis County Jail without bond. Police are investigating after a 33-year-old woman was fatally shot while sitting in a car. The incident occurred at 2:34 p.m. on Thursday the 15th of May, when the victim, later identified as Acacia Miller, was sitting in a parked white car in the 1600 block of South Ridgeway Avenue in the Lawndale neighborhood of Chicago, Illinois, when 3 people approached her. One of them took out a gun and shot her in the head and torso. Acacia tried driving away, but she crashed into a tree at the scene. Medics transported her to Mount Sinai Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. Authorities have yet to identify the suspects or what led to the shooting, and there have been no arrests to date. Acacia was an up-and-coming rapper known as Akdagi. Her social media profile shows her posing with wads of cash in one picture, along with a gun in another. The investigation into the matter continues. 43-year-old Jessica Nadeau-Willett has been charged with drunk driving and a weapons violation after police caught her speeding. At 1:27 a.m. on Friday the 16th of May, officers reported seeing Jessica's vehicle speeding down the westbound side of Route 2 in Ledyard, Connecticut. She was clocked going 107 miles per hour in a 50 miles per hour zone. When officers pulled Jessica over, there was a strong odor of alcohol coming from her breath. Her eyes were glossy and her speech slurred. Jessica was given a standardized field sobriety test, which police say she failed. Police also said they found a firearm in her handbag. Jessica was arrested and charged with driving under the influence, illegal carry of a firearm under the influence, and reckless driving. She was released on a $10,000 bond and is scheduled to appear in the New London Superior Court on the 27th of May. 26-year-old Neil McCaffrey has been arrested for nearly beating his 3-month-old daughter to death. At around 6 p.m. on Thursday the 8th of May, authorities responded to a residence along South Pershing Drive in Muncie, Indiana on reports of an unresponsive infant. When officers arrived, they made contact with the child's parents, who claimed that the infant was suffering from a gas bubble that was stuck in her throat. The duo said that they attempted to burp the child, but she went limp and became unresponsive. Medics on scene believe the victim was suffering from a seizure and was transported by helicopter to Riley Children's Hospital in Indianapolis for treatment. Doctors determined that the infant was suffering from bleeding on both sides of her brain, in her eyes and along her spinal cord. Several days later, after doctors performed emergency surgery to relieve the pressure on the baby's brain, she went into cardiac arrest and was later placed on a feeding tube. Doctors reportedly said a portion of her brain stopped receiving oxygen and started to die, predicting that she'll likely have developmental delays. While at the hospital, investigators interviewed Neil and the child's mother, whose name remains anonymous. During the interview, Neil said that he arrived at home after work at around 5:30 p.m. and gone outside to do some yard work. Soon after, he heard his wife say that the child was being fussy from a gas bubble stuck from eating. He took the baby to his bedroom and slapped her on the back several times to get her to burp. He then placed her on his bed and began to count money. He also said that his wife was in the room. A short while later, he said he noticed that the baby was turning blue and that her body had gone limp. He said that while his wife called 911, he put his daughter in front of a nearby fan because she was hot. Doctors told investigators that the child's head injuries were consistent with trauma, likely from being shaken or thrown to the ground. Officers spoke to Neil's wife, who corroborated Neil's statement, aside from the fact that she was not in the room. When told that the child's injuries were consistent with trauma and shaking, she said she had never shaken her. She said that Neil had come inside after hearing her daughter crying uncontrollably and took her into her bedroom. She said that Neil and her daughter were in the room for about 4 minutes when she stopped crying. Soon after, Neil came out and said the baby wasn't breathing. On Wednesday the 14th of May, Neil was arrested and charged with 1 count of felony neglect of a dependent resulting in serious bodily injury. He was booked into the Delaware County Jail, but was released hours later after posting a $20,000 bond. The investigation into the matter continues. A 32-year-old man is accused of assaulting an elementary school student at a home in Gilliam, Missouri. On the 10th of April, the Missouri Department of Social Services learnt about a child who said her mother would allow different men to abuse her in exchange for meth when she was between 3 and 12 years old. She identified one of the men as Tom, but forgot the other men's names. Tom was identified as Thomas Gibbs Jr. The victim, her brother, her mother, and mother's boyfriend reportedly moved into a small apartment in Gilliam, Missouri when she was 5 years old, though she said it was a mistake because that was when bad things started to happen. The victim said her mother and her boyfriend would smoke out of glass pipes, and it would make them angry and tired. Once her mother and boyfriend broke up, Tom reportedly started hanging out around the apartment. The victim said that Tom lived in a trailer with his mother where they had a room full of chemistry stuff. The victim stopped attending school, so the school sent a hotline number. She reportedly said that Tom beat her and her brother, which the Department of Social Services had pictures of. The victim said that Tom would mainly talk to her rather than her mother when he came around. Tom allegedly had her sit on his lap while they used his PlayStation. She was 7 or 8 years old at the time. She claimed that on more than one occasion, Tom held her down on the bed while he assaulted her. He allegedly told her it was a secret and they were play fighting. The victim told detectives that she didn't have fun. It wasn't a game she liked to play. Detectives spoke with the victim's mother, who said Tom house sat for her while she spent time in jail on the weekends, and that they probably used meth together. She also said that she couldn't remember Tom ever bringing over a PlayStation, but noted they had an Xbox in the house. A neighbour, however, said she saw Tom with the gaming console. On the 7th of May, authorities arrested Thomas at his home and charged him with rape. He's held at the Saline County Jail on a $250,000 cash-only bond. A 23-year-old school worker is accused of engaging in inappropriate acts with a 14-year-old student. Joshua James Moten was a campus supervisor at Richfield Middle School, where the incidents reportedly occurred. On Tuesday the 13th of May, police were informed by the school administrator that Joshua had been engaging in sex acts with a female student. Officers then spoke to a student, who reported that the 14-year-old victim had told them about what was going on, and had reportedly seen emails on the student's laptop from Joshua, which said he was going to take her to the pool area of the school where there were no cameras. The victim later told police that she knew Joshua as a hall monitor in the school. She said that about a month ago, he kissed her in the school basement, causing her to freeze when it happened. Afterwards, the victim said that Joshua would take her from class to the basement multiple times, where he would engage in acts with her over the course of a month, with the most recent incident taking place the day before. Joshua also reportedly messaged the girl over social media during after-school hours. While speaking with authorities, Joshua admitted to contacting the victim on social media, but denied ever engaging in any sexual acts with her. But after further questioning, he reportedly confessed he had. He then agreed that the encounters were inappropriate and illegal because she was a student and he holds a position of authority at the school. Joshua was arrested and charged with first and second degree criminal sexual conduct. He remains held at the Hennepin County Jail. If convicted of the charges, Joshua faces up to 55 years in prison. 24-year-old Deshaun James Armfield is behind bars for fatally shooting his girlfriend 20-year-old Alicia Odom. At 10:21 p.m. on Thursday the 15th of May, authorities responded to the Ramada Inn at 3030 North Roberts Avenue in Lumberton, North Carolina, on reports of a domestic disturbance. When officers arrived, they found Alicia in a critical condition, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. She was transported to a nearby hospital for treatment, but died from her injuries. During the course of the investigation, authorities identified Alicia's boyfriend Deshaun as a suspect. However, he had fled the scene before officers arrived. At around 12:05 p.m. the following day, Deshaun voluntarily surrendered to officers at the Lumberton Police Department. He was charged with first-degree murder and is held at the Robeson County Jail without bond. Colin Brown is behind bars and is accused of fatally shooting Kente Williams during a fight. At 3:29 p.m. on Monday the 19th of May, authorities responded to a residence at 304 Bellevue Circle in Jacksonville, Arkansas on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they entered the premises and found Kente unresponsive in the hallway with a gunshot wound. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators identified Kylan as a suspect, who say he was in a fight with Kente before the shooting. Kylan then ran from the scene but was later found and brought in for questioning. Kylan is charged with capital murder, aggravated residential burglary, aggravated assault, carrying certain prohibited weapons and first-degree criminal mischief. He's been held at the Pulaski County Regional Detention Facility without bond. Fast food worker 23-year-old Elijah Mackey is accused of fatally shooting customer 51-year-old Wesley Robertson during an argument. At around 10:10 p.m. on Wednesday the 21st of May, authorities responded to a Checkers restaurant at 5780 West Orlo Bronson Memorial Highway in Kissimmee, Florida on reports of a shooting. When officers arrived, they found Wesley unresponsive laying on the ground outside the front of the store with a gunshot wound to his chest. Medics rushed him to a hospital, where he was pronounced dead. After speaking to witnesses and reviewing surveillance footage, investigators learned that Wesley was at the front window of the business receiving his food order when he began complaining. He spoke to one of the female staff and asked for extra mayonnaise packets and then requested to speak to the manager several times. While this was happening, Elijah exited the right side of the building and walked to the front of the business and approached Wesley, and the two men started arguing. Wesley made a derogatory statement to Elijah, and Elijah pulled out a small handgun from his waistband and shot Wesley in the chest, and he collapsed to the ground. Elijah then ran away and was found hiding beneath a stairwell in Celebration Suites about 400 feet away, and while being detained, he asked if Wesley was okay. Elijah's charged with first-degree murder and was booked into the Osceola County Jail. On Friday the 23rd of May, Elijah appeared at the Osceola County Court where the judge denied him bond. An 18-year-old man is behind bars for fatally stabbing his 81-year-old roommate. At around 1 p.m. on Sunday the 18th of May, authorities responded to an independent living group home run by ET Home Care at 2226 Bluebird Avenue in Bartow, Florida, on report of an injured person who needed help. When officers arrived, they quickly realized that the person who needed help was already dead, and that he died a violent death. The victim was identified as 81-year-old Patrick Benway, and he had been stabbed at least 113 times. Police estimate that he had been dead for about 12 hours. Authorities said that Patrick was one of 4 residents living there. During the investigation, authorities identified 18-year-old Moses Ojeda, the victim's roommate, as the primary suspect. Moses had only lived in the home for 5 hours after being released from a mental health facility before stabbing the victim. While questioned, Moses told police that he heard voices in his head telling him to kill Patrick. He said he entered Patrick's bedroom while he was asleep in bed and that he stabbed him multiple times. Patrick woke up and asked, "Why do you want to do this to me?" And Moses replied, "I just do," before Patrick succumbed to his injuries. When detectives asked Moses if he regretted the incident, he replied, "I live my life with no regrets," and that he wanted to kill him because he was already dying. He then added that Patrick was a good guy, and he just had to do what he had to do. There were no disputes prior to the stabbing. When detectives asked Moses why he stabbed Patrick so many times, he said that the knife wasn't very sharp. Authorities said that Moses' mother had dropped her son off at the care facility on the night of Saturday the 17th of May and told employees to hide their knives. Staffers concealed them, but Moses found them anyway. Following the stabbing, Moses reportedly cleaned himself up in the knife and replaced the weapon in the butcher block where it was originally out of sight. He then removed his blood-soaked clothes and placed them in a laundry basket and closed Patrick's door and turned off the light. People at the home group later became concerned when Patrick failed to show up for lunch the following day. Moses was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and tampering with physical evidence. He remains held at the Polk County Jail. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd said that Moses has no prior criminal record, but a history of mental health issues and bouts of rage. He said it's a no-brainer that the defense is going to be that of insanity, but I'm telling you he had clear criminal intent. He acted with malice, with forethought, and he went through the effort to hide the weapon. 43-year-old Kelly Agar Garcia is behind bars for fatally shooting his 26-year-old stepson Azriel Martinez during a dispute. At around 7:10 p.m. on Wednesday the 21st of May, authorities responded to a residence at 1328 Citrus Landing Boulevard in Davenport, Florida following reports of a shooting. Investigators determined that the incident began with a disagreement over a video game. Police learned that shortly before 7 p.m, Kelly and his wife, 48-year-old Adrienne Daza, were at home with Adrienne's two minor children, 9 and 11, and her adult son, 26-year-old Azriel Martinez. Adrienne is the biological mother of all three, while Kelly is their stepfather. Authorities said that Adrienne discovered a 9-year-old playing Fortnite, a game his parents had forbidden him from playing in Azriel's upstairs bedroom. When Adrienne attempted to discipline the boy by taking away his cell phone, the 9-year-old became upset. As Adrienne and her son walked into her bedroom, the 9-year-old retrieved a Smith & Wesson 9mm handgun from a nightstand drawer. Kelly and Adrienne struggled with the child for control of the weapon, with Kelly eventually gaining possession of the gun. At that point, Azriel entered the bedroom and saw the 9-year-old in an agitated state, and a verbal altercation between Azriel and Kelly began. During this confrontation, Kelly shot Azriel several times in the chest and stomach. Azriel retreated from the bedroom, with Kelly following him. He then shot Azriel twice more on the back before he collapsed to the ground. Azriel was transported to a local hospital, where he later died from his injuries. Kelly was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and unlawful storage of a firearm, accessible to a minor. He's currently being held in the Polk County Jail. Police Chief Steve Parker said that Azriel was unhappy with his mother's relationship with Kelly and become more outspoken over the last couple of weeks, leading to arguments. Steve described Kelly as a disciplinarian and that Azriel did not like the way he disciplined the two young children. He also mentioned that police had been to the home before in 2022 after a referral from the Florida Department of Children and Families, but said they could not comment further on the prior visit. 26-year-old Lavana Torres is behind bars for beating and stabbing a 7-year-old son. The incident occurred at around 7 a.m. on the morning of Saturday the 17th of May at an apartment at 1729 West Toohey Avenue in the Rogers Park neighborhood of Chicago, Illinois. Authorities said that Lavana became upset after waking up and finding her son had caused the mess in the home after she spent the previous night cleaning. Lavana approached her son and struck him multiple times before he fled into the kitchen and hid in a cabinet under the sink. After she failed to pull him out of this area, she grabbed a silver knife and stabbed the boy repeatedly until she heard him yell, "Ouch!" After noticing her son bleeding, Lavana grabbed him and raced downstairs to her mother's apartment in the same building. When the child's grandmother saw the boy had stab wounds to his abdomen and left leg, she demanded Lavana take him to the hospital immediately. Lavana obliged and rushed him to the Evanston Hospital. Once hospitalized, the boy had to be airlifted to Lurie Children's Hospital, where he underwent emergency surgery for a ruptured diaphragm. The boy remains hospitalized on a ventilator and chest tube. He's listed in a fair condition and is expected to survive. Medical staff notified police about the boy's injuries, and at around 9:50 a.m. that morning Lavana was arrested. Detectives spoke with Lavana's mother and 11-year-old cousin. The cousin told police that he heard Lavana tell her mother that she threatened to cut or stab the boy if he didn't come out of the cabinet. After police arrested Lavana, the cousin said he heard Lavana tell her mother not to tell anyone what happened and to tell a different story. During an interview with detectives, Lavana said she'd been waving the knife around while trying to find her son in the cabinet and accidentally stabbed him. She identified the knife she used and police later recovered it. Lavana is charged with aggravated battery of a victim under the age of 13, and she was booked into the Cook County Jail. She appeared in the Cook County Court on the 19th of May, where the judge ordered her held without bond pending her trial. She's due back in court for a hearing on the 13th of June. Authorities said that Lavana has a history of violent behaviour. In 2017, she punched her mother in the face because she would not give her any money, and she did the same thing to her sister in 2019. The investigation into the matter continues. 28-year-old Selena Doxson has been arrested after a 1-year-old son drowned while being left unattended in a bath. On the morning of Thursday, the 15th of May, medics responded to a duplex residence at 5321 North 53rd Street in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, after Selena called 911 to report her son was unresponsive. When paramedics arrived, they took over CPR duties from the mother and transported the baby to Children's Hospital in Wisconsin, where he was pronounced dead at 9:45 a.m. While questioned, Selena told police that her 1 and 3-year-old sons woke up between 5:30 a.m. and 6 a.m. that morning. She fed them before running a bath. She said she placed her sons in the tub with the water level just above the height of the 1-year-old's belly when he was in a seated position. After washing the kids, Selena said she decided to let the boys play in the bathtub, leaving them in the bathroom and going into the kitchen to make pancakes and sausage, which normally takes about 2 to 3 minutes. When the food was done cooking, she said she began washing the dishes. She said she was in the kitchen for about 4 minutes when a 3-year-old son walked into the kitchen soaking wet. She said that she then went into the bathroom to get a towel and that the 1-year-old was still playing in the bath water. She dried a 3-year-old off in the hallway outside the bathroom and went back to the kitchen before going back to get the 1-year-old out of the tub. That's when she found her son's body floating face up in the water, unresponsive with his lips blue. She immediately pulled him out of the water and started screaming for help. She tried patting him on the back, but he remained unresponsive. A neighbour responded to Selena's cries for help and assisted her until medics arrived. She said that she then placed her son on the bathroom floor and attempted CPR. As she gave chest compressions, water came out of his mouth. An autopsy determined that the child's death was asphyxia due to drowning. Selena said she typically bathes her children separately and only recently started bathing the younger child in the bathtub instead of the sink. She said that he was not able to walk on his own, but could stand up and cruise when holding onto things around the home. Authorities said that Selena admitted that she should have had far less water in the bathtub for her child's safety. She also confirmed that she was unable to see the bathroom from the kitchen where she was preparing food. Selena is charged with neglect of a child causing death. On Tuesday the 20th of May, she appeared in the Milwaukee County Court where the judge set her bond at $10,000. She's due back in court for a preliminary hearing on the 30th of May. A 26-year-old man is behind bars for fatally shooting his 25-year-old girlfriend. At around 12:25 a.m. on Sunday the 18th of May, authorities responded to the 200 block of Moorhead Avenue in West Conshohocken, Pennsylvania and reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found a woman laying face down on the sidewalk with multiple gunshot wounds to her torso. She was transported to a local hospital, where she was pronounced dead. The victim was identified as 25-year-old Alyssa Rose Weist and her death was ruled a homicide. Detectives found that the door to Alyssa's residence, a few doors from where she was found, was ajar, and there was blood found inside the home and along the sidewalk leading to her body. Police also recovered 5 projectiles, located both inside the residence and outside next to her body. Police determined that Alyssa was struck by gunshots which started in her home. She managed to run away and make it out the front door, and then halfway down the block before being fatally struck. Authorities discovered that Alyssa had been in a relationship with 26-year-old Michael Dukowitz for the last 2 years. A neighbour reported seeing Michael standing by a silver Ford F-150 truck immediately after the shooting, and then seen leaving the area. Authorities located data from multiple license plate readers, which identified Michael's truck driving through the area almost immediately after Alyssa's death. A warrant was issued for Michael's arrest, and less than 12 hours later he turned himself in to police. Michael's charged with first-degree murder, third-degree murder and possessing an instrument of crime. He's held at the Montgomery County Jail with bond denied. A preliminary hearing is scheduled for the 27th of May. The motive of the killing is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. 24-year-old Nicholas Sansucci is accused of assaulting an 8-year-old girl at an Italian restaurant. The incident occurred on the evening of the 25th of April at Saggio's at 107 Cornell Drive in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The girl was looking at a waterfall inside the restaurant when Nicholas hit her over the head with a beer bottle, then sliced her chin and throat with a broken bottle. She was seriously injured and required 19 stitches. Police said that the victim and Nicholas did not know each other prior to the incident, and it was an unprovoked attack. The victim's father, Britton Rose, told police that he found his daughter soaking wet in the restaurant when she explained to him that someone had come up from behind and broke a beer bottle over her head. Britton said that the restaurant was crowded and that there was a long line when he and his family arrived, so they knew it was going to be a while before they were seated at a table. As they waited to be seated to order a pizza, he said his wife and daughter went to walk around and look at the murals and other decorations inside. He then heard a loud pop and his wife from across the restaurant yelling, "No, no, stop," and then he realised something was going on with his family. Britton then stepped in to help when Nicholas pulled out a pocket knife after the two got into an altercation. Witnesses, including an off-duty paramedic and intensive care unit nurse, rushed to the girl's aid. The pair applied pressure and kept the child calm until emergency responders arrived. Britton said his daughter is expected to be okay, and is extremely lucky as her major arteries were missed. Following Nicholas's arrest, he told investigators that he attacked the 8-year-old girl because she got in his way. On Monday the 19th of May, Nicholas was indicted by a grand jury in Bernalillo County on charges of abuse resulting in great bodily harm, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. He entered a plea of not guilty. He remains held at the Bernalillo County Jail without bond. If convicted of the charges, Nicholas faces up to 25 years behind bars. 57-year-old Celestine Ward is behind bars after she stabbed her daughter-in-law during an altercation. At around 3:40 p.m. on Wednesday the 21st of May, authorities responded to a residence in the 700 block of Southwest 4th Avenue in Homestead, Florida on reports of a stabbing. When an officer knocked on the door, Celestine answered. Just past her, an officer could see a woman sitting in a pool of blood on the living room floor, leaning against a cot bed. She was later lifted to Jackson South Medical Center in a critical condition. Detectives interviewed a girl at the home who said the whole thing started with her own parents arguing until her father left the home. Once he was gone, her mother and grandmother began to argue when the argument turned physical. The girl told investigators that grandma started to kill mummy with a knife, and the knife is in the room under the bed. Authorities were able to speak to the injured victim, who's not been named at the hospital. She said that she and her mother-in-law were drinking alcoholic beverages at Chili's Grill and Bar in Homestead earlier that day. Later on, when the argument began, the daughter-in-law could not recall what the fight was about, but did remember Celestine charging toward her twice, the second time with a knife and stabbing her multiple times. Celestine told investigators that the fight and stabbing were self-defense, claiming the daughter-in-law attacked and punched her several times in the face, but officers did not see any visible injuries on her. Celestine was arrested and charged with attempted murder, and is held at the Turner Guilford Night Correctional Center without bond. A 53-year-old woman is accused of fatally shooting her 60-year-old ex-husband. On Friday the 16th of May, authorities responded to Frederick Van Sant Jr.'s residence along Dinger Court in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina on a report of a suspicious vehicle parked outside. When officers arrived to complete a welfare check on Frederick, they saw a white Honda truck parked outside but no lights on inside the home. When police knocked on the door, he was answered by a woman covered in blood, later identified as Joanna Van Sant. She appeared flustered and then excitedly told officers that Frederick was at the back of the home. Officers noted a large blood trail through the house and called Joanna outside while they went inside to search the property. Police followed the blood trail to the back of the premises, where they found Frederick's body inside a locked porch closet with a gunshot wound to the head. Joanna was arrested and charged with murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime, and she remains held at the J. Reuben Long Detention Centre with bond denied. Authorities said that the former couple divorced in 2021, and Joanna retained a residence nearby. If convicted of the charges, Joanna faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. The investigation into the matter continues. A 72-year-old man is behind bars for shooting at door-to-door salesmen as they left his property. On the afternoon of Monday the 19th of May, two salesmen were selling solar panel packages when they knocked on a door of a residence at 13379 Bobadilla Lane in Port Charlotte, Florida, and were met by a woman who was upset that they were there and told them to leave. As they began to leave the property, they suddenly heard multiple gunshots and turned to see a man, later identified as William Mark Williams, pointing a gun in their direction. He fired several more shots at them as they ran to a neighbour's home and pounded on the door. The neighbour sent the men in the backyard as she called 911. Deputies arrived at the scene and detained William, identified as the shooter by the victims. The neighbour said she also heard gunshots just before the two men banged on her door. Authorities obtained a search warrant for Williams' residence, where detectives located multiple firearms and ammunition inside. Additionally, detectives found one spent and one unspent casing outside. William declined to speak with detectives, asking instead for an attorney. He was arrested and charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and discharging a firearm in public. He remains held at the Charlotte County Jail without bond. 27-year-old Bethany Stocking is behind bars after a 6-year-old daughter drowned. At just before 6 p.m. on Monday the 19th of May, authorities responded to Toledo Bend Reservoir in Manny, Louisiana, after receiving a 911 call reporting a child had just been pulled from the lake. The investigation revealed that the 6-year-old special needs girl was left unattended, and she walked a very short distance from the house on Dogwood Drive to the lake. The mother pulled the child from the lake and began doing CPR. The child was unable to be revived and was later pronounced dead at Sabine Medical Center. Later that night, Bethany was arrested and charged with 1 count of felony cruelty to juveniles. She is held at the Sabine Parish Women's Jail and no bond has been set at this stage. Bethany was on probation from an arrest in 2023 after she pled guilty to cruelty to juveniles and driving under the influence with child endangerment. The case remains under investigation. 43-year-old Olympia Lastra is behind bars after she intentionally burned her 46-year-old boyfriend with grease. At 5:17 p.m. on Tuesday the 6th of May, authorities responded to the Stay Lodge Motel at 1610 Whitesville Road in LaGrange, Georgia on reports of a domestic dispute. Inside, officers determined that during the argument, the live-in girlfriend of the victim poured a pot of hot chicken grease on his upper body while he sat in a chair near the kitchen. It's unclear what the dispute was about. The victim suffered severe burns to his head, neck, back and shoulders, and he was transported to a burn center where he is recovering. Authorities arrested Olympia and charged her with aggravated battery. She remains held at the Troup County Jail without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. A man accused of hitting his neighbors with his car in Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, killing one of them, has died in the Dane County Jail. At 5:57 a.m. on Tuesday the 6th of May, deputies found 49-year-old Jeffrey Andres unresponsive in his cell less than 24 hours after his initial court appearance. They, along with jail medical staff and paramedics, tried to save him, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. Jeffrey had been charged with first-degree intentional homicide in the death of 41-year-old Dr. Cami Hansen. Cottage Grove police said that Cami died after being hit by a car on the 28th of April, when she was on an evening walk on a street with her husband and one of her sons. Jeffrey was also charged with attempted first-degree intentional homicide against Cami's husband and son. He was charged with mistreatment of an animal causing death for the death of the Hansens' pit bull dog in the crash. Authorities said that Jeffrey hit the family with his car hours after reading a police report about an alleged crime that Hansen's son committed against his child. Jeffrey admitted to being the driver of the car and told police he was having suicidal thoughts. Records show that the Hansen family and Andres family are neighbours. Court documents said that the families were close until the alleged crime happened in March. Police found videos on Hansen's son's phone that victimised Andres' child. Jeffrey was being held at the Dane County Jail on a $1 million bond at the time of his death. 30-year-old Justin Stacey is behind bars for the murder and dismemberment of 75-year-old Robert Francis, who was supposed to take care of. The murder took place in February, but on the 5th of May, Justin's brother Brian Stacey reported the killing to police. The two brothers were living at Robert's home near the intersection of State Road 100 and Course Road in Whitingham, Vermont at the time of the incident. Brian told police that on the morning of the 10th of February, he heard Justin having some kind of altercation and came downstairs to find his brother attacking Robert. He said he left the house, and when he came back hours later, his brother told him he had killed the older man. Brian also told police he saw Robert's dismembered body in the basement, and his brother burning the man's remains in an outdoor fire pit. Authorities then determined that Robert had been killed at his home and took Justin into custody. While questioned, Justin told police that Robert hurt himself while attacking him and then asked Jason to let him die because of the pain he suffered from medical conditions. Justin gave investigators several different explanations for Robert's death, changing the story more than once. Justin told police that he met Robert several years ago and that the two had a grandfather and grandson relationship. Robert owned the home where they lived, and Justin took care of Robert as he had limited mobility and used an electric wheelchair. Justin was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and giving false information to a police officer. He remains held at the Windham County Jail without bond. Justin was previously charged with simple assault in 2022 after he threw a cell phone at Robert and injured him. He gave police varying stories about that incident as well. The investigation into the matter continues. 68-year-old Timothy Morgan is behind bars for killing his wife, 67-year-old Catherine Morgan. At 4:31 a.m. on Sunday the 4th of May, authorities responded to a residence in the 18,400 block of Conley Street in Detroit, Michigan, on reports of domestic violence. When officers arrived, they entered the premises and found blood spatter throughout, and Catherine unresponsive in the living room with multiple stab wounds to the back of her head. Medics pronounced her dead at the scene. Police said that Timothy stabbed his wife several times with a plastic sword before fatally striking her in the head with a pair of pliers. Timothy turned himself into the 11th precinct of the Detroit Police Department a short time later and told the officers that he killed a demon pretending to be his wife. Timothy is charged with first-degree murder and he remains held at the Wayne County Jail without bond. The motive of the killing is unclear as the investigation into the matter continues. A Tallahassee, Florida woman will spend the rest of her days behind bars for fatally beating her girlfriend's 3-year-old son with a tire iron. On Tuesday the 6th of May 2025, 28-year-old T. Leah Jefferson pleaded no contest to first-degree murder and aggravated abuse in the 2020 death of her girlfriend's toddler son Miguel. A judge sentenced her to life in prison for the murder charge and 30 years in prison for the child abuse charge. At around 7 p.m. on the 19th of October 2020, T. Leah took the child to an emergency room at the Tallahassee Memorial Hospital. The boy was unresponsive and cold to touch, with severe trauma to his face and head. Doctors pronounced him dead within minutes of arrival. Hospital staff then quickly called the Tallahassee Police Department. T. Leah told investigators that she lived with her girlfriend, Miguel, and his 6-year-old sister, and claimed the boy was standing on the sink brushing his teeth when he fell and hit the toilet, causing the porcelain to shatter. Investigators noted at least 6 deep lacerations on his head and face, along with a nearly severed finger, and determined the injuries were not consistent with a fall as T. Leah had claimed. They also noted Miguel had injuries throughout his body in various stages of healing. T. Leah told detectives that she had watched Miguel all day while his mother was at work and his sibling at school. The sibling came home from school at around 3:15 p.m. Some 20 minutes later, she told Miguel to brush his teeth. She went into the bathroom and saw he was standing at the sink, and she told him to get down and momentarily left the bathroom. She said that is when he fell and hit the toilet, and that the lacerations were caused by the shattered toilet. Detectives then confronted her about her timeline. Had she brought Miguel to the hospital immediately after he suffered his injuries, she would have arrived at around 4 p.m. and not 7 p.m. Investigators also told her the boy's injuries were not consistent with a fall, and that's when T. Leah admitted to hitting him with a tire iron. She said that she became angry when the boy refused to climb down from the sink. She then grabbed a tire iron from a toolkit and threw it at him, hitting him in the side of the face. It also hit the toilet, causing it to shatter, and she hit the boy a total of 3 or 4 times. She said she recalled seeing blood spray from Miguel's wounds as he struck him. T. Leah also admitted that the boy was likely deceased when she took him to the hospital. Police arrested T. Leah and she's been imprisoned ever since. Prosecutors had been seeking the death penalty before a plea agreement was consented to by the child's parents to reduce the punishment to life in prison. Authorities determined that Miguel and his sister were subjected to prior abuse. The Department of Children and Families took custody of the sibling. A substitute teacher in Marin County, Florida is behind bars following allegations of inappropriate behavior with a student. On Wednesday the 7th of May, 24-year-old Diane Lee Torres was taken into custody after an investigation revealed troubling communications and interactions with a minor. Authorities began the investigation on the 21st of February when a school resource officer was alerted by an assistant principal at Horizon Academy about the behavior which was reported by a student. The student claimed to have seen Diane Lee massaging another student's head during class. The incident prompted further inquiry into Diane Lee's interactions with students. Witnesses reported that several students, including the victim, were in regular contact with Diane Lee through a messaging platform Discord. Authorities said that it was revealed that Diane Lee had previously been disciplined for inappropriately messaging with students in December. Despite warnings, she continued to communicate with students, including the victim. As investigation progressed, law enforcement obtained consent to search the victim's computer and cell phone. A digital forensic technician conducted an extraction of the victim's phone, revealing deleted messages that indicated inappropriate exchanges between Diane Lee and the victim. The messages included discussions about explicit content and requests for the victim to delete inappropriate exchanges. On Wednesday the 7th of May, deputies located Diane Lee and conducted a post-Miranda interview. During questioning, she admitted to being in a dating relationship with the victim, acknowledging that he was a former student. Diane Lee reportedly confessed to sending nude photos of herself to the victim and receiving explicit images in return. She also admitted to exchanging in sexual acts with the victim on multiple occasions. Diane Lee was charged with possession of child sexual abuse material and transmission of material harmful to minors. She was booked into the Marin County Jail where she remains pending further investigation. A Las Vegas woman will spend the rest of her life behind bars for torturing and killing a young boy she was watching over while his mother was at a shelter. On Wednesday the 7th of May 2025, Clark County District Court Judge Michelle Levitt sentenced 48-year-old Crystal Stevens to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the killing of 4-year-old Brandon Steckler Jr. in 2018. In February, Crystal accepted a plea deal on charges of first-degree murder, first-degree kidnapping resulting in substantial bodily harm and child abuse, which allowed her to avoid facing the death penalty. On the 30th of July 2018, authorities responded to a call about a possible child drowning at an apartment in the 300 block of East Silverado Ranch Boulevard in Las Vegas, Nevada, but when they arrived, they didn't find any evidence of drowning. Medics transported the 4-year-old boy to hospital, where he died the next day. The Chief Deputy District Attorney said at the time that Brandon's autopsy took 8 hours due to the horrific injuries to the child. Brandon, who was autistic, was malnourished and had wounds all over his body, including fractured ribs, rat bites, burns, cuts and rectal trauma. He also had meth in his system, sepsis and pneumonia. Authorities later discovered drug residue and paraphernalia in Crystal's home, and she was arrested. Crystal had been caring for Brandon and his sister while their mother was in a domestic violence shelter. A couple of weeks later, she killed him. Child Protective Services reportedly received several calls about Brandon's condition, but they only conducted one investigation and could not substantiate the claims. During sentencing, Crystal told Judge Levitt that she took full responsibility for her actions and was committed to maintaining her mental health and sobriety. "I'm terribly sorry for my horrific actions," she said. Crystal addressed Brandon's family, stating, "I assure you, I take full responsibility for the loss of someone so precious to you. I dedicate my life to your family and making that my priority," she said. 45-year-old Jason Middleton is behind bars after allegedly rammed a woman's car, threatened to rape her, kill her and a baby, and then tried to kidnap her. Authorities said that on the 28th of April, Jason ran into the back of the woman's vehicle while she was stopped at an intersection near US 52 and County Road 100 West in Hancock County, Indiana. Jason and the woman got out of their cars, and the suspect reportedly tried to blame the victim for the crash, even though it was apparently his fault. He swore and shouted at her, "What did I do?" And she replied, "You hit me twice, and I have a baby in the car," she said. The woman went back to her car and called police to report the crash and gather her insurance information. Dispatchers told her officers were headed there, and to call back if the other driver left the scene. Jason then reportedly pulled out a gun and threatened to rape her and shoot her and her baby if she didn't get into his van. She began to fight with him over the gun, and he put his hand on the back of her neck and told her to shut up. A witness saw Jason and the woman grappling. The victim yelled "my baby" when other motorists had stopped and came to the woman's aid. Jason took off in the van, but the victim had written down his license plate before their confrontation. Police spotted the vehicle shortly thereafter in a nearby county and found him hiding in a storage container. A gun was not located when Jason was arrested, and he claimed it was a woman who pulled out the gun on him, and he fled the scene fearing she was going to shoot him. Jason's charged with attempted rape, attempted armed kidnapping and criminal confinement with a deadly weapon. He remains held at the Morgan County Jail on a $500,000 bond. His next court date is scheduled for the 21st of May. The investigation into the matter continues. 43-year-old Jennifer Mulligan is behind bars for fatally shooting her 90-year-old father. At 11:11 a.m. on Wednesday the 7th of May, authorities responded to a residence at 509 Rodney Lane in Virginia Beach, Virginia, after Jennifer called dispatch and told them that she'd shot her dad. When officers arrived at the scene, they found 90-year-old Woodard McClure unresponsive in the garage with a gunshot wound to his head. Despite efforts to save him, he was pronounced dead at the scene. Jennifer was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and use of a firearm in commission of a felony. She remains held at the Virginia Beach Correctional Center without bond. Neighbors said that Jennifer lived with a father who was in hospice care and that she found it increasingly difficult to care for him. 40-year-old Chester Grant is behind bars for fatally stabbing his roommate 23-year-old Elizabeth Dunzy during an argument. At just before 4 p.m. on Saturday the 26th of April, authorities responded to an apartment along Goforth Street in Houston, Texas for a welfare check, but officers received no answer. They then walked around to the back of the apartment where they found blood on the concrete patio. When officers entered the premises, they found Elizabeth unresponsive on the kitchen floor with 28 stab wounds. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Officers also discovered Chester in his bedroom with multiple stab wounds, and he was rushed to a hospital to treat his injuries. Authorities said that Elizabeth and Chester were relatively new roommates for about 2 months when they got into some disagreement over his cat. When the argument escalated and Chester stabbed her to death, Chester then attempted to take his own life by stabbing himself at least 6 times, including in the side of the neck. Chester's charged with murder, and he was booked into the Harris County Jail the following day. He remains held on a $500,000 bond. Elizabeth was originally from the UK, but she moved to the United States for nursing school in Houston and was days away from graduating. Her family is now working to bring her body back home. The investigation into the matter continues. 20-year-old Dasani Badgett is behind bars for fatally shooting her boyfriend. At around 5:40 p.m. on Saturday the 3rd of May, authorities responded to a home along Weaver Hollow Way in Knoxville, Tennessee, where they found Dasani in the driveway screaming for help. When officers entered the residence, they found a man, Stephen Morgan, unresponsive on the living room floor with a gunshot wound to his upper chest. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Dasani told investigators that Stephen had used her phone after he broke his. She said she later found several messages on her phone after he logged onto her Yahoo account, saying she discovered he was cheating on her. She then grabbed a gun from a bedroom nightstand and waited on the couch for an hour for Stephen to come home from work. Once he arrived, she confronted him about the messages with a gun in her hand. She said she racked the gun several times to show him it was loaded, and demanded he do things regarding the situation of their relationship. Investigators said that the argument escalated, and Stephen tried to grab the gun from her. At that point, she pulled the trigger and shot him in the hand and chest. Dasani was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, and remains held at the Roger D. Wilson Detention Facility on a $300,000 bond. 22-year-old Kobe Parker is accused of breaking 13 bones of his 4-week-old son in Greenville, North Carolina. Investigators said that the infant suffered 10 broken ribs, broken tibias in both legs, and a broken fibula in the right leg. Authorities said the incident occurred on the 3rd of March, but they didn't learn about it until early April, and the baby boy was brought to a medical provider with significant bruising. Further tests uncovered the multiple broken bones. On Friday the 2nd of May, Kobe was arrested and charged with 2 counts of intentional child abuse with serious bodily harm. He remains held at the Pitt County Jail on a $1 million bond. The investigation into the matter continues. 44-year-old Yui Inoue will spend the rest of her life behind bars for killing her 7-year-old son Kai Inoue and 9-year-old daughter Mi Inoue with a meat cleaver in 2021. On the 2nd of May, Yui appeared in the Maricopa court in Arizona and received 2 consecutive life sentences following her conviction in February for 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of child abuse, and 1 count of disorderly conduct for the deaths of her 2 children. She was also ordered to spend 35 years in prison for the last 2 charges. At around 12:30 a.m. on the 15th of May 2021, authorities responded to Yui's apartment in Mill and Southern Avenues in Tempe, Arizona, for a domestic disturbance because she and her husband were reportedly disagreeing about finances before she moved back to Japan. Her husband left their apartment because she became aggressive and used a meat cleaver to destroy his computer and other electronics. The responding officers saw the 2 children sleeping and they left. Soon after, Yui went to her children's bedroom and held each child down on the floor while she delivered dozens of blows with a meat cleaver. Yui put her bloody clothes in a trash bag, washed the knife, took a shower and packed a bag with a passport, jewellery and cash. She threw trash boxes and mattress blankets and other items over her son's and daughter's bodies before locking the front door and leaving the apartment. She then went to the Tempe Police Department, where she told an officer that she heard voices telling her that she killed her kids and she saw blood. Officers went back to the premises and discovered the victims deceased. During sentencing, Yui told the judge through a Japanese interpreter that my children are not dead. My parents have them. They're spending their time with my parents. I love my children very much, so it's very strange. Judge Jeffrey Ruder said, "Words can't adequately describe what occurred. I can't imagine what those children went through in their last minutes. The fear, the pain, the suffering. It's incomprehensible," he said. A man is behind bars for severely beating an elderly woman. On Saturday the 3rd of May, authorities responded to a residence at 7317 Camelback Drive in Shreveport, Louisiana regarding an assault and battery incident. When officers arrived, they located an 86-year-old woman suffering from severe but non-life-threatening injuries, including lacerations and broken bones. Medics treated the victim on scene and transported her to Oxnard Health Hospital, where she's recovering. The suspect, identified as Joe White, had barricaded himself inside the residence following the assault, but was swiftly taken into custody by officers without further incident. Preliminary investigation revealed that the victim was delivering food to the suspect's mother when she was unexpectedly attacked by Joe. Joe's been charged with second-degree battery and he was booked into the Shreveport City Jail. The Shreveport Police Department said that attacking a defenseless senior citizen is cowardly and reprehensible, and we will not tolerate this kind of violence in our community. The motive of the attack is unclear as the investigation into the matter continues. 34-year-old Joseph Davis is behind bars for fatally stabbing 33-year-old Christine Morris. On early Friday the 2nd of May, authorities responded to a residence at 330 Edmond Avenue in St. Paul, Minnesota for a welfare check. Joseph had reportedly called a family member and admitted to killing the mother of his child. He added that he was sorry and that he had left their 2-year-old child at the home. When officers entered the home, they found a toddler on the couch in the living room. While checking upstairs, they found Christine in a bedroom unresponsive, covered with a blanket and visible stab wounds, and her body was cold to touch. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner determined that Christine died from a loss of blood from multiple sharp force injuries, and her death was ruled a homicide. Investigators said that she had been stabbed in the head, neck, left arm, chest and back. Her right lung, left kidney, spleen, diaphragm and descending colon had been pierced. Another woman who has children with Joseph said he called her that morning at 6:54 a.m. and left a message saying he killed the mother of one of his other children. He added that he wanted to see the 2 kids before turning himself in. The woman said that Joseph is violent and that she has an active order for protection against him. She added that she told a lawyer she was afraid Joseph would kill her or someone else at some point. One of Christine's friends showed police text messages the victim had sent stating that if she or her daughter ended up dead or missing, Joseph was responsible. Another of Christine's friends told police that Joseph had been messaging the victim throughout the evening and accusing her of cheating on him. Investigators later learnt that Joseph was in an apartment on 31st Avenue South in Minneapolis. The Minneapolis SWAT team executed a search warrant and arrested him. The renter of the apartment said she met Joseph on a dating app about a month ago, and he'd asked her if he could stay with her, as he was in trouble and running from police. He didn't tell her what kind of trouble he was in. After giving Joseph his Miranda warning, detectives said they told Joseph they found Christine and that she had been pretty messed up. When asked how it happened, Joseph said that Christine had been cheating on him and manipulating him for over 5 years. He claims he set up a recording in the house which captured her sleeping with somebody, though he then admitted the recording was grainy and hard to hear. He said an argument turned physical when he confronted her about lying, and he started stabbing her. Joseph said the stabbing began on the bed, but Christine rolled off, so he sat on the bed and watched her take her last breaths. He then covered her body because he didn't want to look at her. He said he should have never stabbed her, and that it was brutal and he felt bad. She suffered, bro. She definitely suffered, he told police, adding that the stabbing wasn't planned. He then stated that he didn't remember where the knife was because he had blacked out after he left. Joseph is charged with second-degree murder, and he remains held at the Ramsey County Jail on a $2.5 million bond. 21-year-old Kerry Johnson has been arrested after she broke into a vehicle and assaulted the owner. On the morning of Sunday, the 4th of May, authorities responded to a report of a theft in progress on South Henderson Drive in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Hopkinsville police said the homeowner called for police after he found Kerry inside his car in a broken window. She was reportedly extremely intoxicated and attacked the homeowner with pepper spray and injured his finger. Kerry was arrested and charged with second-degree assault, alcohol intoxication in a public place, and second-degree criminal mischief. Police are investigating a homicide following a fatal shooting in Franklin County, Virginia. At 11:52 a.m. on Monday the 5th of May, authorities responded to a report of an unresponsive female in the 500 block of Holly Ridge Road in Henry, Virginia. When deputies arrived, they located a deceased woman sitting in the driver's seat of a vehicle with multiple gunshot wounds. The victim was identified as 24-year-old Emily Grace Keene of Callaway, Virginia. Her body was transported to the office of the Chief Medical Examiner in Roanoke, where her death was ruled a homicide. No suspects or motive in the killing has been announced, as the investigation into the matter continues. 62-year-old Dana Halbs is behind bars for killing 75-year-old Stanley Brown, who claimed he shot in self-defense. At 9:14 p.m. on Thursday the 1st of May, authorities responded to a report of an injured person outside a home in the 18,000 block of 490th Street in Mystic, Iowa. When deputies arrived, they found Stanley lying unresponsive in the front yard with a single gunshot wound to his chest, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. While at the property, deputies spoke with Dana. He claimed he shot a Hispanic man in self-defense. He told deputies that he was inside the building when he saw 3 Hispanic men in the driveway, who he believed posed an immediate threat. Dana said he went outside to grab a gun from his car before he confronted the men. Dana claimed that during the alleged confrontation, Stanley, who was one of the men, advanced toward him. Dana told investigators that he shot it at Stanley before he fired his pistol at him 3 times. Dana said that he shot the man with the intent to kill, but when Dana was told that Stanley had died, Dana then denied shooting him. Dana also told investigators that he didn't see Stanley with a weapon throughout the incident. Law enforcement officials investigating the scene found Dana's pistol on the property, which contained bullets that matched the spent .45 caliber casing that was found near Stanley's body. Dana's cell phone was also found at the scene. Investigators noted that there was no evidence of 3 Hispanic men being at the property before, during or after the shooting, and that there was no evidence to support that Stanley was a threat to Dana before his death. An adult who was at the property with Dana and Stanley roughly an hour before the shooting told investigators that there was no known conflicts or issues between the 2 men. Dana was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and is held at the Upper Neuse County Jail. The investigation into the matter continues. On Thursday the 24th of April 2025, 18-year-old Chloe Copeland Anderson appeared at the Sheridan County District Court in Nebraska and was handed a 35 to 60-year sentence for fatally slashing her newborn son's throat moments after giving birth. Chloe earlier pleaded no contest to second-degree murder in August last year, in exchange for prosecutors downgrading the initial charge of first-degree murder. They also dropped charges of child abuse resulting in death and the use of a deadly weapon as part of the plea deal. Prosecutors said that Chloe, who was 16 years old at the time, delivered the baby boy in secret at a Gordon, Nebraska home before retrieving a knife from the kitchen on the 6th of November 2023. She hid her pregnancy from her parents, hurried back to her bedroom where she slit the newborn baby's throat. A police officer went to the home following a report that a teenager had given birth and the baby wasn't breathing. The father of the teen met the officer at the door and told him that the child was stillborn and it was too late to save him. The officer entered the home, and when he went into the bedroom he found a teen girl squatting by the door and the girl's mother holding the infant wrapped in a towel. The girl's mother was crying hysterically and kept saying she hurt him, referring to her daughter hurting the baby, and said, "You can see the marks." Court documents reveal that the officer saw the child's throat had been cut through the windpipe and there were multiple stab wounds on the left side of the chest. The officer started CPR until medics arrived and took over. The girl's parents told the officer that they saw the daughter open a drawer that normally contained a boning knife. The officer searched the drawer and noted that the knife was missing. Officers were called to the home later after the girl's father said he found the knife wrapped in a coat and hidden in a container in a closet. The teen's attorney told Lancaster said his client was abused by family members and the ruthless murder was a result of long-lasting trauma and other mental conditions she suffered. Todd also claimed that the teen was impregnated by a 19-year-old at the age of 15. Sexual intercourse between a person who's 19 and an individual who's 15 or younger is considered sexual assault in the state of Nebraska. Todd also claimed in court that no adult stepped in to help his client or stage an intervention. As it stands now, Chloe will be at least 51 when she leaves prison, as the judge agreed to give her credit for more than 500 days she already served behind bars. 73-year-old Kenneth Portler is behind bars for fatally shooting his 75-year-old wife, Karen Portler, because he was exhausted by caring for her. At around 2:15 p.m. on the 25th of April, authorities responded to a home in the first block of Frontier Trail in Fenton, Missouri, after an out-of-state relative called 911 to report that Kenneth had shot and killed his wife. When police arrived at the residence, Kenneth met them at the front door and led them to Karen's body in the floor of their first-floor bedroom. She had a wound to her lower back and trauma to her left armpit and upper arm. Kenneth then handed police the gun he used in the murder and admitted to shooting his wife. He told investigators that Karen suffered from mental health conditions and he'd become tired while caring for her for the past few days. He said he didn't want his wife to die in a nursing home, so he shot her instead. He also said he wanted his wife's death to be humane, so he chose a specific cartridge for the firearm and chose his shot placement to kill her as quick as possible. Kenneth then made multiple statements advising he no longer wants to live and wants to end his life so he can be with his wife. Kenneth was arrested at the scene and charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. He remains held at the Jefferson County Jail without bond. 39-year-old Shanetta Boswell was behind bars for fatally stabbing firefighter paramedic 29-year-old Graham Hoffman, who tried to help her after she was placed in an ambulance. At around 12:40 a.m. on Sunday the 27th of April, authorities responded to the intersection of Missouri 152 Highway and North Lake Trafficway in Kansas City, Missouri to check on the welfare of a person in the area. When officers arrived, they found Shanetta nearby walking on the shoulder of the highway. Police ordered an ambulance to be sent to the scene because Shanetta had a laceration to her finger that was bleeding heavily. Kansas City, Missouri Fire Department paramedics spoke to Shanetta and determined that she wasn't trying to hurt herself and did not want to go to hospital. Police officers offered to give her a ride home, but she turned down those offers. She changed her mind and agreed to go to hospital in the back of the ambulance while Graham attended to a bleeding finger. A police officer then followed the ambulance as it left the scene on the way to St. Luke's Hospital. At 1:25 a.m., the driver of the ambulance pulled over near North Platte Purchase Drive with its emergency lights activated. The ambulance driver then ran back to the back of the vehicle where a struggle was underway between Shanetta and Graham. The driver heard Graham yell for Shanetta to sit back down, then called out for help because she had a knife. As the driver opened the doors to help Graham, Shanetta stabbed Graham in the chest, piercing his heart. The officer saw what happened, called for further assistance and then entered the ambulance. Shanetta then jumped into the ambulance driver's seat and tried unsuccessfully to put it into drive. A struggle ensued between the officer and Shanetta as he tried to grab her legs. She slipped from his grip and ran to the back of the ambulance, where the officer cut her off and Shanetta got back into the driver's seat again. The officer pulled his weapon and grabbed Shanetta with his other hand, causing both of them to fall. Shanetta then bit down on his arm hard and he hit her on the back of the head with his weapon so she would stop biting. Meanwhile, the ambulance driver was trying to keep Graham alert as he was becoming non-responsive. More officers arrived at the scene and detained Shanetta. A second ambulance arrived and rushed Graham to the North Kansas City Hospital, where he later died from his injuries. Detectives recovered a knife inside the ambulance, and blood was found throughout the back of the vehicle and on nearby medical equipment. Shanette is charged with first-degree murder, armed criminal action, third-degree assault and resisting arrest. She remains held at the Clay County Jail on a $1 million bond. Less than a week prior to the murder, Shanette was arrested and charged for second-degree assault in another incident. In a probable cause statement filed in the Clay County Circuit Court, authorities said that Shanette bit a Platte City officer on the 23rd of April. A Platte City officer living in Kansas City, Missouri, saw Shanette trying to get into his personal vehicle. The officer was still in uniform and told her to stop, and she started walking toward his front door. The officer grabbed Shanette by the arm in order to detain her. Shanette tried to grab the knife in the officer's vest multiple times. While trying to radio for help, Shanette bit his arm and would not let go. Prosecutors charged Shanette with second-degree assault of a police officer and resisting arrest in that case. She then posted a $10,000 bond just 2 days later on the 25th of April. A male suspect is behind bars for fatally shooting a man during an argument over weed. At around 2:55 a.m. on the 25th of April, authorities responded to the 400 block of Lee Drive in St. Charles, Missouri, in response to a subject yelling for help in the street. Officers arrived on scene and located the subject, who led officers to a nearby residence. Inside the home, a second subject with a gunshot wound was located. The second subject, 19-year-old Bobby Jackson from St. Louis, was pronounced dead at the scene. Within 14 hours, St. Charles investigators identified, located and arrested the suspect, 19-year-old Damon John Campbell of Maryland Heights, and obtained his confession. Witnesses were also located and interviewed. The investigation revealed that the shooting stemmed from a disturbance over marijuana. Damon's charged with second-degree murder and armed criminal action. He remains held at the St. Charles County Jail without bond. 45-year-old Yuli Shopaku is behind bars for fatally beating his former mother-in-law, 70-year-old Lita Shape, outside her apartment with a baseball bat. At 12:32 p.m. on Monday the 28th of April, authorities responded to 10 Trumbull apartment complex at 100 Oakview Drive in Trumbull, Connecticut, after receiving multiple 911 calls reporting that a man was attacking a woman outside the main office building near the entrance. When officers arrived at the complex parking lot, they found Lita lying on her back, severely beaten with head trauma, gasping for air with a baseball bat next to her. Medics arrived shortly thereafter and attempted life-saving measures, but injuries were too severe and she was pronounced dead at 12:55 p.m. During the investigation, police identified Yuli, who remained on scene, as a suspect in the murder and took him into custody. During an interview, Yuli told police that he saw his former mother-in-law and another former relative while he was at the food court at Trumbull Mall to order pizza and chicken wings for his children to have when they came back from school, and they made eye contact but no words were exchanged. After that, he followed them from the mall to the apartment building. Investigators found surveillance video that showed Yuli pull up in a white Mercedes behind an Uber that Lita arrived home in and call out to her and the other person with her when they got out of the vehicle. Yuli then grabbed a baseball bat from his trunk as they walked away from him, and he ran past the acquaintance and repeatedly hit Lita with it for 92 seconds. He then dropped the bat and spent about 2.5 minutes milling around the area until police arrived. Yuli allegedly confessed to the murder and told detectives that he blamed his mother-in-law for his divorce, losing his house in Monroe, and the fact that he does not have any money. Court records indicate that Yuli and his wife finalized their divorce nearly 4 years ago. Yuli's charged with murder, and he's been held at the Bridgeport Correction Center on a $3 million bond. Yuli's attorney said his client told him he recently had a stroke. 29-year-old Joy Chandra Nath is behind bars for fatally stabbing his ex-girlfriend, 24-year-old Maria Garcia Molina. At 3:54 p.m. on Saturday the 26th of April, a woman flagged down a deputy to report that a 3-year-old granddaughter had been found wandering alone in the parking lot of a residential complex near Southwest 144th Street and Southwest 134th Avenue, Miami, Florida. The child appeared to have dry blood on her face and clothing, however she was uninjured. Deputies went to the girl's home in search of her mother Maria, but she wasn't there. During a search of the area, officers found Maria's vehicle parked at Twin Lakes Complex where she lived. Blood was visible on the front passenger seat, and Maria's body was found wrapped in blankets on the rear floorboard. She had suffered multiple stab wounds to her neck, torso and arms. She was declared dead at the scene. Maria's young daughter told detectives that her mother had been with a man named Joy and that she had been hit in the head and was now sleeping. Family members informed investigators that Joy was Maria's ex-boyfriend and that he had a history of stalking her. Maria had accused Joy of persistent stalking that she feared would escalate into violence, so she had previously obtained a temporary restraining order against him. In her petition for protection, Maria stated that in late January, Joy was seen hiding behind a trash can near a car. When she spotted him, she quickly drove away. Days later, on the 29th of January, her aunt and uncle encountered Joy again while walking their dog, who rushed toward him as he stood by a neighbour's trash can. Maria also described an incident after their breakup in November last year, when Joy showed up at her workplace with chocolates and flowers. Later, she said that Joy told her, "I left something on your car," and she discovered an Apple AirTag device attached to her vehicle. On the night before Maria's death, Joy followed her to Dolphin Mall where he had an altercation with her current boyfriend. On Sunday the 27th of April, Joy returned to the crime scene in a black Lexus with the headlights off while investigators were still processing the area. Police noticed scratches and bruises on his face, neck and arms. While questioned, Joy told police he was planning on returning some of Maria's items, which were in his possession. He waived his right to an attorney and provided a recorded statement saying he spent time with the young mother and daughter for breakfast on the morning of Saturday the 26th of April, but then they went their separate ways. A search of his vehicle revealed some of Maria's possessions, including a purse, cell phone and several forms of ID. Cell phone data shows she travelled from her apartment to Joy's residence and then back to the parking lot where her body was found. Joy was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and child abuse and remains at the Turner Guildford Night Correction Centre without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. 19-year-old Malachi Scutler is behind bars following the beating death of his 6-week-old son. On the 20th of April, authorities were notified that the child had been admitted to the Randall Children's Hospital in Portland, Oregon with a severe brain injury. Following an investigation, police arrested Malachi for first-degree assault on his infant child. The boy, Paxton Schuler, died on the 23rd of April, and Malachi was indicted on 2 counts of second-degree murder, in addition to the assault charge. Clackamas County Court documents show that the assault took place on the 16th of April, and that Malachi was deliberately cruel to the boy during the attack. According to the Clackamas County District Attorney's Office, Paxton was left in Malachi's care while the boy's mother was at work during the attack. Malachi and Paxton's mother were living at the Budget Inn in Gladstone, Oregon. A police investigation found that the child's death was caused by lack of oxygen to the brain as a result of blunt force trauma or extreme pressure. Malachi has been held without bail at the Clackamas County Jail. The investigation into the matter continues. A man is behind bars and is accused of sexually abusing a young girl. 38-year-old Richard White of Buell, Idaho, is charged with 1 count of rape and 1 count of lewd conduct with a child under 16. A Buell police affidavit signed on the 22nd of April reveals that the investigation began after conducting CARES interviews with the victim. During the interviews, the girl said that Richard sexually assaulted her. According to the affidavit, authorities searched an apartment in Buell, collecting evidence and DNA samples. Richard is held at the Twin Falls County Jail with his bond set at $250,000. The relationship between Richard and the victim is unknown, as the investigation into the matter continues. On Monday the 28th of April, 62-year-old Randall Duffy appeared in the Cass County Court in Fargo, North Dakota, and was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the death of a woman he was in a relationship with that she was trying to break off. Randall pleaded guilty in January to choking 59-year-old Jody Campbell to death. Jody worked at Blackbird Woodfire in downtown Fargo. On the 8th of June last year, police reports state that Randall called and asked him to send someone to an apartment in the 3100 block of 33rd Street South in Fargo, North Dakota. He led officers to a closet where he put Jody's body. Randall told officers that the two got into a fight over a meth pipe. He said he got mad and choked her too long. He has been jailed since his arrest. 24-year-old Derricka Ross is behind bars for fatally shooting 22-year-old Jovian Williams. At 9:14 p.m. on Sunday the 25th of May, authorities responded to Darby at Steeplechase apartment complex at 11220 West Road in Houston, Texas, after receiving a 911 call about a disturbance and about 5 minutes later they received reports of shots fired at the same apartment. When deputies arrived at the scene at 9:23 p.m, they found Javian deceased by a stairwell outside the apartment building with a gunshot wound. After speaking to several people who reportedly witnessed the entire incident, detectives identified Derek as the suspect in the shooting. Authorities said that Derek and Javian were in a dating relationship, and Javian returned to their apartment to get his belongings, and the two got into an argument when Derek shot him. Authorities arrested Derek that night and located the gun believed to be used in the killing. She's charged with murder and is held at the Harris County Jail on a $150,000 bond. A 33-year-old man is behind bars for setting the mother of his child on fire. On the 28th of April, Delvin Terrell Stone of 1948 Barrel Street in Toledo, Ohio, doused the woman with gasoline and ignited it, causing severe burns to her body. The victim, whose name has not been released, required surgery as part of her treatment for the injuries. On the 23rd of May, Delvin was arrested after investigators spoke to the victim about what happened. He's charged with aggravated arson, felonious assault and domestic violence, and he was booked into the Lucas County Jail. On the 27th of May, Delvin was arraigned in the Toledo Municipal Court, where his bond was set at $250,000. He was also assigned a public defender. A temporary protection order was filed on behalf of the victim. Delvin is scheduled to appear in court for a preliminary hearing on the 3rd of June. Authorities said that Delvin has at least 2 prior convictions for domestic violence. A 35-year-old woman is behind bars for stabbing a 12-year-old daughter in the face and neck and trying to conceal her body even though she was still alive. On the afternoon of Monday, the 26th of May, authorities responded to the Cecil Webb Wildlife Management Area in Punta Gorda, Florida, in reference to a girl with lacerations who was found by people passing by. When deputies arrived, they found the victim to be weak and in need of immediate medical attention. The victim told deputies that her mother, identified as Gwendolyn Gerard, had attacked her with a knife and tried to hide her under the brush before she fled in a gold-coloured van. The Lee County Sheriff's Office located Gwendolyn's vehicle in North Fort Myers, and she was taken in for questioning. Major crime detectives interviewed Gwendolyn and obtained a full confession to include the location of the knife used in the attack. She was booked into the Lee County Jail on a $750,000 bond and will be extradited to Charlotte County, where she faces charges of aggravated battery and aggravated child abuse. Authorities said that the victim has been treated for her wounds and is in a stable condition. The victim's grandmother said that her granddaughter is a brave little girl. She said she fought her mother off as long as she could, and then she played dead, and then her mother left her there. 46-year-old Christy Crampton has been arrested at an airport in Sanford, Florida, after she repeatedly hit a child on a plane. The incident occurred at just before 2 p.m. on Monday, the 26th of May, while Christy was on board an Allegiant's flight from Orlando Sanford International Airport to Hagerstown, Maryland. Christy was set to fly home with her family after the Disney World vacation when the boy started to call her Fatter Miss Piggy. He then told her that she couldn't fit in the airplane seat. Witnesses reported Christy began hitting the child with her fist and hit him on the head with a water bottle. She then slammed his head into the airplane window, and the child used his arms to cover his head. Authorities have not said how old the boy is, but Christy said the child was very rude and disrespectful during their trip to Disney. After the child called her fat, Christy told police she took his phone away. She said he pushed her arms off the armrest twice, and that's when he smacked him in the face. Authorities said that she went beyond typical disciplinary actions. One witness said the woman was not correcting the child, she was abusing him. Sanford Airport police arrested Christy outside an airport gate after the pilot requested for law enforcement. She's charged with cruelty toward a child by abuse without great bodily harm. On Tuesday, the 27th of May, Christy appeared in front of a Seminole County judge who granted her a $10,000 bond. The judge ordered her to have no contact with the child. A 42-year-old Florida man has been killed after he charged at police officers with garden shears and attempted to steal a gun from a patrol vehicle. At just before 6 a.m. on Monday, the 26th of May, authorities received a call from Racetrack Gas Station at 6486 South Florida Avenue in Lakeland, Florida about a man, later identified as 42-year-old Timothy Patrick Schultz, behaving erratically. The caller told dispatch that there's a guy in here, and he's bizarre, and he's shaking and asking to call his son. When deputies arrived, the man had already left, and they began searching for him for about 40 minutes. At 7:43 a.m, authorities received another call about a man in an alligator-infested lake just off Lake Clark Court. One witness tried to throw the man a life preserver, but he wouldn't take it. Another said they tried to talk to him, but said the guy growled at me, so I ran into the house and locked the door. As deputies arrived, Timothy exited the lake and found a pair of garden shears. After throwing a rock at a truck, he charged at police officers while brandishing the garden shears. Deputies tried to de-escalate, backing up and ordered Timothy to drop the shears. They also tried to tase him twice, but he continued to charge. He then climbed into the passenger side of a running patrol vehicle and was trying to get the rifle or shotgun out of the holder. The deputies then shot Timothy multiple times, killing him. They noted that his right arm had fresh alligator bite marks. Authorities said that Timothy has a long history of methamphetamine-related arrests. 32-year-old Valerie Zamora is behind bars following the death of her 20-month-old son Jose Zamora. On the night of the 15th of May, Valerie brought Jose to the lobby of Sanford Medical Center in Fargo, North Dakota. Hospital staff noted the boy was pale, clammy and cold, and did not have a pulse. Life-saving measures were performed, but were unsuccessful, and he was pronounced dead at 11:05 p.m. An autopsy showed the boy died from complications of a blunt force injury due to an assault, noting contusions all over his body, a perforated bowel, hemorrhages to the liver and pancreas, rib fractures and a distended belly. The Ramsey County Medical Examiner's Office ruled his death a homicide. Valerie told police she lives at 1106 18 Half Street South in Moorhead, Minnesota, about 6 miles from the hospital, with her partner and 3 children, and that Jose had been vomiting on the morning of the 15th of May. She said she gave him Tylenol and Gatorade, then ran errands with the children and her partner. She said that Jose basically slept all day and was not himself, and was breathing differently. She told her partner that she would take him to a doctor, but on the way to the hospital, she stopped at a Walmart in Dilworth to buy Pedialyte, while the boy and her partner stayed in the vehicle. Surveillance video from Walmart showed them arriving at the store at 11:12 p.m. that night. While she was inside the store, her partner came in to tell her that the boy was throwing up blood. At that point, she said she sped to the hospital. When questioned about the boy's bruising, she told investigators that the child bruised easily. Authorities said that she changed her story regarding how ill the child was before the hospital visit. She eventually said that the child had started throwing up on the 14th of May, and that the vomit material was normal, but then changed to black or dark substances, and that he couldn't keep any liquids down. Witnesses told police that they had seen the boy at various times on the 15th of May, and had urged Valerie to take him to a hospital. One of Valerie's other children told investigators that she felt that the child needed immediate medical care when she got home from school that afternoon, but Valerie said she would wait until her partner came home from work. Valerie told police she never hurt the boy, but was afraid to take him in for medical care because it was obviously neglect, and she feared social services would take her children away. Valerie was arrested in Fargo, North Dakota, and is charged with second-degree unintentional murder. She was held at the Cass County Jail, but has since been extradited back to the Clay County Jail in Minnesota, where she remains held on a $1 million bond. A tattoo artist is facing multiple charges for allegedly sexually assaulting his clients. 44-year-old Christopher Arduin was charged with 1 count of third-degree sexual assault and 4 counts of fourth-degree sexual assault. Authorities said that Christopher was employed at Skin Prints at 403 Farewell Street in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. 2 of the 3 victims reported to police that Christopher touched them inappropriately during tattoo sessions. The 3rd victim worked with him. All the incidents happened between March of 2024 and February of 2025. Christopher was fired after one of the victims told the owners of Skin Prints what happened. On the morning of Wednesday, the 28th of May, Christopher appeared in the Eau Claire County Court for an initial appearance. He posted the $1,000 cash bond. Judge John Thiessen ordered that the conditions of his bond include that Christopher cannot tattoo anyone without a third-party witness present. He must also give a copy of the criminal complaint to any clients before he tattoos them. If convicted on all the charges, Christopher faces up to 13 years in prison. 18-year-old Jacob Fields is charged with murder in the shooting death of 42-year-old Tiffany Adkins. At around 12:10 a.m. on Tuesday the 27th of May, Authorities responded to Sheet's gas station at 5623 McCorkle Avenue in Charleston, West Virginia on reports of a shooting. When officers arrived, they found Tiffany unresponsive in the parking lot with a gunshot wound to her head. She was rushed to a local hospital, where she was pronounced dead. Authorities identified Jacob as the suspect in the shooting, and he was taken into custody. While questioned, Jacob told detectives that he was wiping down the barrel of his gun while sitting in the car with another person when it accidentally went off. He was initially charged with wanton endangerment and involuntary manslaughter, but after police reviewed surveillance footage from Sheets, investigators claimed he intentionally shot Tiffany, and the charges were upgraded to first-degree murder the next day. Authorities said that Tiffany's car was parked at a gas pump. She got out of her car to pump gas, and then started to walk toward the front door of the store. While she passed in front of Jacob's car, the gun discharged inside his vehicle. Police said that the bullet passed through Jacob's front windshield and struck Tiffany in the back of the head. Authorities said that Jacob looked toward Tiffany, waited for her to enter his field of fire and raised his pistol with both hands, pointing it in Tiffany's direction. Police said a muzzle flash can be seen on the video, along with the front windshield glass being shattered. Tiffany collapsed to the ground moments later. Jacob reportedly admitted to pointing the gun at Tiffany after he was shown the video evidence. Investigators said there was no indication that Jacob and Tiffany had any kind of altercation before the shooting. Jacob remains held at the South Central Regional Jail with bond denied. A preliminary hearing is scheduled for the 4th of June. The motive of the killing is unclear, as investigation into the matter continues. A 25-year-old woman is behind bars for shooting a man. At just after 5 p.m. on Monday the 26th of May, authorities responded to the Bridgeview Village Apartments complex along North Romney Street in Charleston, South Carolina on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found a man had been shot. The victim, who has not been identified, was taken to a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. During the investigation, detectives identified 25-year-old Timoni Malloy as the shooting suspect. Authorities said that Timoni and the male suspect are known to each other, and Timoni went to the apartment complex with the intent to physically assault him. Timoni was arrested and charged with attempted murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime, and she was booked into the El Cannon Detention Center. 20-year-old Vianney Alyssa Costa has been arrested after a 1-year-old nephew inhaled smoke from a THC vape and became intoxicated. On Friday the 16th of May, authorities responded to a residence in the 13200 block of Walker Post Avenue in El Paso, Texas, after receiving a call of a 1-year-old having trouble breathing. When deputies arrived, they described the baby boy as appearing lethargic and having glassy eyes. The deputies then spoke with the relatives of the child, who said they were taking care of the child while his mother was at work, when they heard the child coughing, and the grandmother saw him with the THC vape in his hands. Deputies then spoke to Vianney, who reportedly admitted that the THC vape was hers, but she thought it was empty, not charged and out of reach from the child. The child's father was also home when the incident happened. He was reportedly working on a car outside, unaware of what happened until deputies arrived at the home. When speaking with deputies, he said that the grandmother and the aunt were supposed to be watching the child. The baby was taken to a local hospital, where after a urine test, authorities identified the child had THC in his system. On Thursday the 22nd of May, Vianney was arrested and charged with drug possession and endangerment of a child, and she was booked into the El Paso County Jail. Later that day, she was released after posting a $6,000 bond. It's unclear if anyone else watching the child is facing charges for this incident. The investigation into the matter continues. On Tuesday the 27th of May 2025, 24-year-old Gayassi Stribling appeared at the Oakland County Circuit Court in Michigan and was sentenced to 40 to 60 years in prison for first-degree murder in the fatal shooting of his 8-year-old sister Bailey Singleton in 2021. Gayassi also received an additional 2 years for a felony firearm charge in connection with the killing. On the 3rd of January 2021, Gayassi shot his sister in the head in the living room of their home at 12 North Apartments Complex in Southfield, Michigan, because she was talking back to him. She was rushed to hospital in a critical condition and succumbed to injuries days later. Gayassi told police that his sister was shot during a break-in. 2 witnesses at the home told a different story. Gayassi also attempted to hide the murder weapon, but police later found it. Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald said after he was found guilty in April, Bailey should still be here with us today. Her murder was a tragedy for her family. It's unconscionable that anyone, let alone an 8-year-old child, could be murdered by a relative and in their own home over the slightest disagreements. This case is unfortunately a reminder of how gun violence is a public health epidemic that can end a life in an instant. 2 men are behind bars for viciously beating a store clerk. At just after 10 p.m. on Wednesday the 21st of May, authorities responded to a Circle K along Scenic Gulf Drive in Miramar Beach, Florida, after a 911 caller told dispatch that a co-worker had just been assaulted in the store's parking lot. When officers arrived, they found the male victim with visible injuries, including a deep laceration above his eye and abrasions on his arms and hands. The employee told police that he encountered 2 young men near his truck when he was leaving work. One of the individuals reportedly asked for a ride, but when he declined, he was violently attacked. The victim said that one assailant struck him in the face with a crushed aluminum can, while the second attacked him from behind, delivering multiple blows to his head. As the employee attempted to flee, the attackers began throwing items at him from the bed of his truck, including a vehicle engine starter estimated to weigh over 10 pounds. During the investigation, authorities canvassed the area for witnesses and secured surveillance footage from nearby properties. Later that night, detectives identified the suspects Adrian Robert Gonzalez and Daniel Guy Miller, both 20 years old and residents of North Carolina. At around 1 p.m. the following day, the suspects were located and taken into custody without incident. Both men had been charged with aggravated battery and were transported to the Walton County Jail. They were both released on the morning of Friday the 23rd of May, after they each posted $10,000 cash-only bonds. Nicholas Foley and Kayla Renard have been arrested after the infant child was found living in deplorable conditions. On Monday the 19th of May, police responded to a home at 233 South Shirley Avenue in Hunnier Path, South Carolina, after the Department of Social Services reported concerns about an 8-month-old baby living in unsafe and unsanitary conditions. When officers arrived, they entered the premises and found numerous raccoons, rabbits, dogs, cats and chickens inside, and the place was littered with animal feces and trash. A goat carcass was also discovered in the bathtub, which had been decomposing for several days. Police contacted a vet from an animal shelter for assistance due to the overwhelming number of animals. In total, the vet and a team helped safely remove more than 40 animals from the property. Nicholas and Kayla were arrested and charged with unlawful conduct toward a child, ill treatment of animals and other violations of town ordinances. They were booked into the Anderson County Detention Center and have since been released on $10,000 surety bonds. The baby was placed into the care of a relative and is reportedly doing okay. 22-year-old Harry Oxner Jr. is behind bars after he shot at a vehicle following a dispute. On Monday the 24th of May, authorities responded to Joe's Quick Mart at 3400 South Fraser Street in Georgetown, South Carolina on report of a shooting incident. Deputies spoke to a man at the scene who identified Harry as a suspect who fired a single gunshot into the driver's door of his vehicle after an argument over a gasoline spill at the store's gas pumps. No injuries were reported. The following morning, Harry was arrested and charged with attempted murder, and he was booked into the Georgetown County Jail. 34-year-old Zachary Lee is behind bars for fatally shooting his wife during a domestic dispute. At around 2:40 a.m. on Saturday the 24th of May, authorities responded to a residence along Tallahassee Highway, just east of Nemon Road in Tallahassee, Alabama, after Zachary called 911 to report that he just shot his wife after she shot him first. Zachary said he was outside on the back porch of the home, and when dispatchers told him to go inside and render aid to his wife until they arrived, he refused, saying, "I'm not going back in there." When deputies arrived on scene, they found Zachary unresponsive and laying on his back. They also found his wife Bethany Lee inside the home near a bed by the back door, laying face down with a gun in her left hand. She sustained multiple gunshot wounds and was pronounced dead at the scene. Zachary was taken to a Montgomery hospital with a gunshot wound to his leg. He was treated and discharged a short time later, and then taken into custody. Zachary is charged with murder and remains held at the Elmore County Jail without bond. Authorities said they've been to the home multiple times in the past few years for domestic violence calls, and that Bethany filed for divorce in 2018, but ultimately asked for it to be dismissed. The investigation into the matter continues. 43-year-old Randall Allen is behind bars for fatally shooting the father of her children. At around 2:30 p.m. on Saturday the 24th of May, authorities responded to a residence at 1258 South Perkins Ferry Road in Moss Bluff, Louisiana on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they entered the premises and found 48-year-old Brett Daigle of Canyon City, Colorado deceased with multiple gunshot wounds. After interviewing several witnesses, detectives determined that Randall had discharged a firearm at the home during a child custody exchange, striking Brett several times, killing him. Randall was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, and she remains held at the Calcasieu Parish Jail pending a bond hearing. The investigation into the matter continues. 69-year-old Eddie Thomas is accused of setting a building on fire in an attempt to kill his roommates. At just after 3:15 a.m. on Thursday the 15th of May, authorities responded to a fire at a group home located along Dawn Heights Drive in Lakeland, Florida, and learned 5 residents were inside. They all made it out alive, however 2 were seriously injured. Investigators allege that Eddie started the blaze. Authorities said that at 3:15 a.m. that morning, Eddie asked one of the residents for a ride into town, but the roommate said no. Eddie then asked for jumper cables to give him a jump, but the resident also declined. Eddie was holding a plastic jug of liquid at the time. Shortly after Eddie left the room, the victim said he smelled gasoline followed by a boom. He opened his bedroom door to find flames in the hallway. The victim, who uses a walker, tried to escape but fell, so crawled to the exit and sustained burns to his hands and feet as a result. He was later transported to a hospital for his injuries. Another victim was asleep at the time but heard someone yelling about the fire. He tried to escape through the hallway but had to crawl out of his window instead. A third victim woke up to yelling and ran out of his bedroom. He fell over one of his roommates but survived. The fourth victim went to use the restroom in the middle of the night when he saw Eddie walking around the house but said that was common. The resident said he heard splashing sounds, smelled gasoline, and then heard an igniting sound before someone shouted fire. He said he couldn't see the front door because of the smoke, and he fell while running. When he made it outside the house, he said he noticed a fire going from a tree to the front yard and into the house. A fifth victim underwent emergency surgery and hasn't been interviewed, but is expected to be okay. Authorities said that all the victims said they smelled gasoline, and claimed the hallway was wet and slippery. Investigators located 6 accelerant alert points and 2 pour patterns and claimed that Eddie poured accelerant outside each bedroom to prevent anyone from getting out. 2 of the victims said they saw Eddie backing out of the yard in his red Chevrolet truck and driving away. One of the victims said he was confused as to why Eddie woke him up in the middle of the night to ask him for a ride into town since he already had a car. The landlord of the house told authorities that one of the residents called her saying Eddie had lit the house on fire. Eddie, who had been living there since 2023, was reportedly served an eviction notice due to ongoing disputes and failure to pay rent, requiring him to leave by the 20th of May. Shortly after the fire, Eddie went to a hospital complaining of chest pains. He spent 2 days and they released him. Knowing that police were looking for him, he then checked himself into the mental health ward of the hospital, claiming he wasn't mentally right. On Tuesday the 20th of May, authorities located Eddie and arrested him. He didn't confess to lighting the building on fire, and he requested an attorney. Eddie's charged with first-degree arson and 5 counts of first-degree attempted murder, and he remains held at the Polk County Jail. Eddie has an extensive criminal history beginning in 1975, when he was arrested for burglary and grand theft. In the years following, he had been arrested for probation violations multiple times. In May of 1986, Eddie went to his estranged wife's home and fatally shot her in front of their kids. He was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 17 years in prison and 5 years probation. In 2007, Eddie was arrested for sexual battery with a deadly weapon and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. The following year, he pleaded no contest to lewd and lascivious contact with a victim between 12 and 16. Eddie was registered as a sex offender and spent time behind bars until 2020. He violated his probation again in 2021. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd said this was a deliberate and dangerous act that put multiple lives at risk. Eddie showed a complete disregard for human life yet again when he set this fire, knowing the victims were inside. Thanks to our detectives, we have him in custody and justice will be served. 27-year-old D'Angelo Miller is behind bars for fatally shooting his girlfriend, 23-year-old Jaira Smith. At 5:53 a.m. on Friday the 23rd of May, authorities responded to an apartment complex in the 400 block of East Georgia Avenue in Memphis, Tennessee, and reports of an argument followed by shots fired on the second floor of one of the buildings. When officers arrived, they went upstairs and found Jaira deceased, laying face down in the front of an apartment with a gunshot wound to her face. Jaira's boyfriend D'Angelo was identified as a suspect in the shooting and he was taken into custody. Authorities said that Jaira went to visit D'Angelo, who lived upstairs in the same building, and they'd been dating for about 2 months. The two got into a verbal altercation outside his apartment when he shot her at blank range with a shotgun. It's unclear what the dispute was about. The victim's father, Tamarcus Smith, said his daughter lived in the apartment unit downstairs from where she was shot, and her 3 children aged 1, 3 and 6 years old were home asleep when she was killed. D'Angelo is charged with second-degree murder, and he remains held at the Shelby County Jail with bond set at $760,000. D'Angelo has a criminal history and has been charged with domestic violence twice before, and was also charged with violating his bond conditions in relation to those charges. The investigation into the matter continues. A former Gateway, Arkansas police chief has escaped from a prison where he was serving decades for rape and murder. 56-year-old Grant Harden escaped from the North Central Unit in Calico Rock, Arkansas at around 3:40 p.m. on Sunday the 25th of May. Grant had been at the prison since 2017 when he was given a 30-year sentence for first-degree murder. He escaped wearing a Corrections Department type uniform. In February of 2017, a man named James Appleton was sitting in a truck, and while on the phone with his brother-in-law, a car came flying down the road and then stopped. Grant got out of his car and approached James in his vehicle and shot him in the back of the head. A witness reported seeing a truck and a white sedan on the side of the road. He said he heard a boom and saw the sedan drive away. The witness then went to the truck to investigate and found James slumped over the seat. Grant pleaded guilty to murder 8 months later. In February of 2018, Grant's DNA matched a sample from an unsolved 1997 rape of a teacher at Frank Tillery Elementary School. The incident took place on a Sunday morning as the teacher was at the school preparing her lesson plan for the week. She left the classroom to use the restroom and encountered Grant, who was disguised with a knit stocking and sunglasses and carrying a pistol. He raped her in the bathroom and again in the classroom before fleeing the scene. Grant pleaded guilty to the rape after the DNA match and was sentenced to 50 years in prison. Grant served as the Gateway's police chief for about 4 months in early 2016. He had been a Eureka Springs police officer in the mid-1990s, resigning when he was told he was going to be fired for lying in a police report. He served as a Benton County constable from 2009 to 2010 and as a corrections officer in Fayetteville between 2013 and 2014. Benton County Sheriff's Office Lieutenant Shannon Jenkins said that he's taken every steps to assist the Arkansas Department of Corrections in locating Grant. Grant has strong ties to Benton County and will be on high alert, he said. 38-year-old Rodney Hinton Jr. is behind bars and is accused of intentionally killing a deputy after his son was fatally shot by a police officer. Authorities said that around 1 p.m. on Friday the 2nd of May, Rodney intentionally struck a deputy with his vehicle. Hamilton County Deputy 61-year-old Larry Henderson was directing traffic at the University of Cincinnati graduation at the intersection of Martin Luther King Drive and Burnett Woods Drive when he was run over. He was rushed to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center in a critical condition, where he later died. Immediately after the incident, Rodney was arrested. At around 9:30 a.m. on Thursday the 1st of May, officers responded to an apartment complex in East Hill as part of a stolen car investigation, when Rodney's son, 18-year-old Ryan Hinton, was seen running with a gun. An officer chased and shot him and claimed that Ryan pointed a weapon at him. Blurry police body cam footage captured an officer saying, "He's got a gun. He's got a gun," before several shots were fired at Ryan, striking him twice and killing him. A gun was found at the scene, but there's no indication that he fired at police before he was shot. Rodney is charged with aggravated murder, and he remains held at the Hamilton County Jail without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. A former detention deputy in Bexar County, Texas, has been charged with murder after an inmate was found dead. On Friday the 2nd of May, jailer 20-year-old Clemente Lopez was arrested for allowing 3 inmates to access another inmate's cell, which resulted in the assault and death of the inmate. During the early morning hours of Wednesday the 30th of April, 46-year-old Francisca Bazan was viciously assaulted after a group of inmates instructed Clemente to open the door to Francisco's cell. When Clemente opened the cell, he told the inmates to make it bad. The 3 inmates were then seen by Clemente kicking Francisco in the face and smashing his head against the concrete. Authorities said that Clemente was observing the entire assault from outside the jail cell. Other deputies found Francisco in his cell unresponsive. The medical staff's attempts to save him were unsuccessful, and he was pronounced dead at 3:14 a.m. that morning. An autopsy showed that Francisco died from internal bleeding due to the blunt force injuries to the torso, and his death was ruled a homicide. An inmate told investigators that the dispute was due to Francisco failing to pay money he owed his cellmate. Authorities described the attack on Francisco as a coordinated effort between his cellmate and 2 other inmates. Clemente, who's been employed at the detention centre since the 7th of August 2023, admitted to these types of assaults in the past. Following Clemente's arrest, he has since been released on a $500,000 bond. Authorities said that Francisco's death inside the jail is the 4th for the year. Francisco was booked into jail on the 28th of March on charges of evading arrest, detention in a motor vehicle, and possession of a controlled substance. A former Kavuna High School basketball coach and special education teacher has been arrested after an investigation into a video circulating online. On the morning of Friday the 2nd of May, 37-year-old Terrence Miles submitted his resignation during a meeting where Superintendent Amanda Abel had planned to terminate his employment. The resignation comes after a video was leaked to social media showing 2 students whipping another student with a belt while he lay on the ground. Terrence handled the belt at one point and was seen laughing during the incident. In his resignation letter, Terrence said there was an incident that occurred a few days ago that was intended solely and totally as horseplay. Unfortunately, I became a participant in the incident, momentarily forgetting that I was the adult in the room, responsible for overseeing the students instead of playing with them. Later that day, Terrence was arrested on charges of first-degree criminal abuse, second-degree wanton endangerment, and first-degree official misconduct. Terrence was booked into the Hart County Jail without bond. Amanda said that both students involved in the incident have been disciplined in accordance with school policy. 52-year-old Anthony Esposito was accused of beating his 12-year-old son to death with a baseball bat and attempting to kill his 16-year-old daughter. At around 4 p.m. on Thursday the 1st of May, authorities responded to a condo along Hemlock Road in Brantford, Connecticut after a woman called 911 to report that Anthony had killed someone in his home. As police made their way to the scene, they learned that Anthony had left the condo and was driving his silver Chrysler Pacifica. Authorities entered the unit and found Anthony's 12-year-old son on the ground of the basement with head trauma, and he was pronounced dead at 4:10 p.m. Connecticut State Police troopers located Anthony along State Route 79 near the town line near Durham and Madison. They performed a traffic stop, and he was taken to the North Brantford Police Department for questioning. Initially, Anthony asked to speak to a North Haven police officer named Jimmy, and only spoke with investigators after being told he would not be allowed to speak to Jimmy. Anthony then told investigators that his son treated him disrespectfully and would swear at him. He also told police that he often heard voices in his head, those of his mother and father, who he claimed abused him as a child. He said that the voices told him, "Don't let him get away with it" that day. He said he heard the voices saying baseball bat. He then picked up the bat and began swinging it, hitting his son in the back of the head. Anthony told investigators that he needed to pick up his 16-year-old daughter from a bus stop, and that the two had an uneventful ride home. When they arrived home, his daughter asked about her brother, and Anthony told her that he was in the basement. As they walked toward the staircase, he then purposefully pushed his daughter, causing her to fall near where his son's body was. Anthony explained to investigators that if he had been able to get the baseball bat, he likely would have killed his daughter, but she escaped the basement. At that point, he got in his car and left. Anthony was arrested and charged with murder and attempted murder. He remains held at the New Haven County Jail on a $3 million bond. If found guilty of the charges, Anthony faces the possibility of life in prison. 22-year-old Charles Willis is behind bars for abusing a young teen girl he persuaded online to go to his home. At around 5:30 am on Sunday the 27th of April, a 14-year-old girl was found wandering in the area of 7 Mile and Sheldon Roads in Northfield Township, Michigan. Police said that Charles contacted the teen via Snapchat. He then ordered and paid for the girl's 2-hour Uber ride to his house from where she lives in Barry County. The teen told police that Charles told her to stay in the basement where he allegedly committed sex crimes against her. Northfield Township Police Department executed a search warrant at Charles's home and arrested him on charges of kidnapping, enticing a girl under 16 for immoral purposes, child sexually abusive activity, and first-degree criminal sexual conduct. Charles remains held at the Wayne County Jail with bond set at $1 million. Charles's criminal record shows a prior accusation of third-degree criminal sexual conduct or statutory rape from an incident at the end of January 2025, for which he is still facing charges. The investigation into the matter continues. A 20-year-old man is behind bars in connection to a deadly shooting at an apartment complex. At 3:38 am on Saturday the 3rd of May, authorities responded to the Windsor Arms Apartments at 417 Macomb Avenue in Port Gibson, Mississippi on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the scene, they found 22-year-old Larry Mosley Jr. suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Despite immediate medical attention, he was pronounced dead at the scene. During the investigation, police identified 20-year-old Donnie Edwards as a suspect. Donnie was arrested and remains held at the Claiborne County Jail on a murder charge. The shooting remains under investigation. A man is behind bars following a shooting that left 2 people dead and a dog injured. At just after 8:30 am on Friday the 2nd of May, 35-year-old Ross Jovian Smith broke into a home at 194 Carball Lane in Moss Hill, North Carolina, and fatally shot his estranged wife, 33-year-old Latoya Marie Smith, and 24-year-old Kelvin Kenyon. A dog was also wounded in the shooting but survived. After the shooting, Ross fled the scene in a black Chrysler sedan. The vehicle was identified with the assistance of the Kinston Police Department. The Knorr County deputies located the vehicle in the 1400 block of Stroud Avenue in Kinston, but Ross was not inside. At around 11:30 am, deputies took Ross into custody without incident near the State Roads 903 and 11 intersection in Pitt County. He was on foot when he was arrested. Ross is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, felony breaking and entering, and felony cruelty to animals. He remains held at the Lenoir County Jail without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. A 21-year-old man is behind bars for fatally shooting his 20-year-old girlfriend. At around 1:30 am on Sunday the 4th of May, police patrolling the area responded to the 2000 block of South Mirror Street in Amarillo, Texas, after hearing gunshots and receiving multiple 911 calls. When officers arrived, they found multiple shell casings in the street. Witnesses at the scene informed officers that the gunshot victim had already been taken to a local hospital by private vehicle. The victim, 20-year-old Ariana Nicole Estrada, was later pronounced dead from multiple gunshot wounds. Through witness statements and evidence, homicide detectives identified Ariana's boyfriend, 21-year-old David Allen Crowder, as a suspect. He was arrested without incident and charged with murder, and remains held at the Potter County Jail. The motive of the killing is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. A woman is behind bars for stabbing a newborn child to death while in the middle of giving birth to him. At around 8:20 p.m. on the 7th of March 2025, authorities responded to an apartment in the 100 block of Nations Way in Easley, South Carolina for a medical call of a woman in distress. When officers arrived on scene, they quickly realized this was something much more. Officers found evidence that the homeowner, 31-year-old Ann No, had recently given birth to a baby boy. Police reportedly found the deceased body of the newborn in a trash bag along with the umbilical cord. Authorities said that Ann stabbed the baby with a metal letter opener as she was giving birth to him, and continued stabbing after he was born. Authorities said that Ann confessed to the stabbing and showed extreme indifference to human life. Easley Police Chief Brandon Liner said, "I've been doing this for 2.5 decades, and I've never seen anything this gruesome, and I've never seen anything this bad. We'll make sure that this baby will receive justice. It just didn't have a chance at life. Not long. It's our job to make sure that this baby does receive that," he said. Anne was arrested and charged with homicide by child abuse. She appeared before a judge on Tuesday the 11th of March after receiving treatment at a hospital. She was then booked into the Pickens County Jail without bond until her next court hearing due on the 15th of May. If convicted, Anne faces between 20 years to life in prison. The motive of the killing is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. A Georgia woman is accused of abusing a toddler by putting a dog leash around his neck and forcing him to smoke marijuana. The Habersham County Sheriff's Office started investigating 24-year-old Brooke Morgan Bestpitch last year when they discovered that the abuse happened at a home in Hall County. They reached out to the Hall County Sheriff's Office in December. Authorities said that Brooke gave her toddler a marijuana joint and forced him to smoke it. She was arrested and charged with reckless conduct on the 6th of February. She was released from the Hall County Jail the following day after posting a $1,300 bond. The Hall County Sheriff's Office continued its investigation and obtained a search warrant for Brooke's cell phones and Snapchat account. Investigators found photo and video evidence of the toddler hog-tied with belts and yarn. They also found a video of the boy with a dog leash around his neck, which was allegedly being pulled by Brooke, constricting the boy's neck. On Friday the 11th of April, authorities arrested Brooke again and charged her with first-degree child cruelty. She was released from the Hall County Jail the following day after posting an $11,200 bond. The investigation into the matter continues. 34-year-old Jasenia Fayazeli is behind bars for robbing a store. At 9:32 p.m. on Sunday the 11th of May, authorities responded to the Dollar General store at 12,600 Dido Road in Gulfport, Mississippi on reports of an armed robbery. During the investigation, it was discovered that Jasenia entered the business, brandished a firearm and demanded money. She became involved in a physical altercation with an employee before fleeing the business with an undisclosed amount of cash. While officers were still on scene, Jasenia returned to the business to inquire about a cell phone she dropped during the robbery. She was subsequently identified as a suspect of the armed robbery and she was arrested. She was booked into the Harrison County Adult Detention Center, where she remains on a $100,000 bond. 76-year-old Jimmy Jones is facing multiple charges after he shot at a woman who stopped to check on his well-being. The incident occurred on Tuesday the 6th of May, when a woman saw Jimmy's vehicle parked along the side of the road, along County Road 8042 in Marin County, Arkansas, so she stopped to check on him. The victim asked Jimmy if he was okay, and he responded by pointing a handgun at her, prompting her to drive away from the scene. The victim told police that she heard 2 gunshots as she drove away. She said that Jimmy followed her in his car for a short distance before turning down another road. Deputies later found a crashed vehicle near County Road 3530 belonging to Jimmy, with a gun inside, but were unable to locate the suspect. 2 days later, deputies tracked Jimmy down and he was arrested. Jimmy is charged with attempted first-degree murder, second-degree discharging a firearm from a vehicle, and possession of a firearm. He's been held at the Marin County Jail on a $50,000 bond. 24-year-old parents Akayla Bearden and Justin Bearden have been arrested after their 6-month-old twins were found with rat bite wounds on their bodies. During the early morning hours of Friday the 9th of May, deputies responded to a home on D&M Drive in Belton, South Carolina, after the infant's mother found her baby girl in the bassinet covered in blood. Authorities said that a large rat had started eating the baby girl, causing large bite marks across her arms, back of the head, ears and face. Medics transported the girl to the Greenville Memorial Hospital in a serious condition, where she's recovering. During the investigation, authorities located the girl's twin brother who also had bite marks which were found on his feet. During an interview with detectives, the children's parents admitted to the field rats being an ongoing issue inside the home for the last several months. However, they continued to allow the children to live there. The twins' parents were arrested and booked into the Anderson County Jail, and are each charged with unlawful conduct towards a child. The Department of Social Services took custody of the twins and a third child. On the 13th of May, both parents appeared in the Anderson County Court and were granted a personal recognizance bond by the judge, and were ordered to not have contact with their children unless the Department of Social Services authorizes it first. The parents are set to return to court on the 31st of July. If found guilty, they face the possibility of 10 years behind bars. A Pennsylvania man will spend decades behind bars for beating and stabbing his grandmother to death before setting her body on fire. On Friday the 9th of May 2025, 29-year-old George Cisco appeared at the Pike County Court and was sentenced to 23.5 to 60 years in prison after he pleaded guilty but mentally ill to third-degree murder, arson and terroristic threats in the 2024 death of 67-year-old Margie Finlay. At 11:45 a.m. on the 26th of April 2024, crews responded to a fire at Margie's home at 108 Oak Court in Milford Township, Pennsylvania. As firefighters began battling the blaze, they found George covered in blood in the front of the house. When the fire chief asked if he needed any help, he didn't respond. He then walked further into the home and threatened anyone who tried to enter, and said, "I saw my mother on fire," adding that she was the devil and he had to do it. Firefighters extinguished the fire and found Margie dead in the kitchen. Police arrested George as a suspect in the murder. During questioning, he admitted to detectives that he killed his grandmother and started a fire in the house, saying the flea medication she was putting on the cat was harmful. Authorities said that George slashed his grandmother's throat and stabbed her before using a kitchen rag to set her on fire. George told police that in order to kill the devil, he must use the Holy Spirit and fire. An autopsy determined that the cause of death was blunt force trauma and sharp injuries. A psychological exam originally deemed George. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, incompetent to stand trial, but a second one cleared him. Margie's son, Frank Babbitt, said his mother loved George, and he called him a monster. George's attorney said his client lost his way when he stopped taking his medication. County District Attorney Ray Tonkin said, "There are no winners here. The loved ones of Margie Finlay deeply grieve their loss, and that can never be fully repaired," he said. 50-year-old Charles Story is behind bars for fatally shooting his stepbrother, 32-year-old Eduardo Alfaro Jr. At around 7:30 p.m. on Saturday the 10th of May, authorities responded to a residence in the 700 block of North Vista Drive in Houston, Texas on reports of a disturbance. When officers arrived, they entered the premises and found Eduardo in an upstairs bedroom deceased with multiple gunshot wounds. During the investigation, authorities learned that Eduardo got into an argument with Charles when he came to take their mother out for a Mother's Day dinner. During the fight, Charles shot Eduardo to death while their mother was inside the home. It's believed that Charles had been binge drinking at the time. Deputies found Charles still at the scene and took him into custody. He's charged with murder and remains held at the Harris County Jail. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez said, "What should have been a pleasant evening between mother and son instead turned deadly, and that the mother lost 2 sons on Mother's Day." 27-year-old Benjamin Preston Boland is behind bars for raping a minor. On Tuesday the 13th of May, authorities carried out a search warrant at an apartment at Midweed Street in Hartsville, Alabama. During the search, investigators found and arrested Benjamin, who was wanted for rape involving a victim under the age of 15. Benjamin was charged with 3 counts of second-degree rape, with additional charges possible. He was booked into the Morgan County Jail, where he remains held on a $300,000 bond. The investigation into the matter continues. Billy Michael Johnson is behind bars for committing insurance fraud. On the 5th of April 2025, authorities responded to leaving the scene of an accident wreck in the 2100 block of Duckensby Drive, southwest in Decatur, Alabama. When officers arrived, they located an unoccupied 2024 Chevrolet Corvette with substantial damage at the intersection. It was determined that the Corvette had struck a parked vehicle that was unoccupied, just west from where the officers located the Corvette. Both vehicles were towed from the scene. Later that day, Billy, the registered owner of the Corvette, reported the vehicle stolen. The case was assigned to a property crimes detective. During the investigation, probable cause was obtained to confirm Billy had committed insurance fraud for a value of approximately $70,000 by making a false report and insurance claim. On the 8th of May, a warrant for insurance fraud was obtained for Billy's arrest. On the 12th of May, Billy was located roughly 6 miles away from the crime scene in the 900 block of Boys Ranch Road in Danville, and he was taken into custody without incident. He remains held at the Morgan County Jail on a $30,000 bond. 30-year-old Trevon Alexander is behind bars for fatally shooting 33-year-old Joel Jenkins following an argument during a Domino's game. At around 1:05 a.m. on Tuesday the 13th of May, authorities responded to a residence in the 1400 block of Prairie Avenue in Beaumont, Texas on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they entered the premises and found Joel deceased with multiple gunshot wounds. During the investigation, authorities identified Trevon as a suspect in Joel's death. A few hours later, police located Trevon on a porch of an apartment about 6 blocks away in the 1700 block of Cooley Street and took him into custody. While interviewed by detectives, Trevon allegedly confessed to shooting Joel about 4 or 5 times with an AK-47 rifle. Authorities said that the two men had been playing dominoes when the game escalated into a violent argument, and that's when Trevon shot and killed Joel. Trevon's charged with murder and remains held at the Jefferson County Jail on a $1 million bond. If Trevon is released on bond, he must wear a GPS monitor, avoid contact with the victim's family, and not possess a firearm or ammunition. He must also remain confined to his home. 61-year-old Bonnie Hackendorn is behind bars for fatally shooting 57-year-old David Shawless. At just before 9:30 p.m. on Monday the 12th of May, authorities responded to a home in the 12,000 block of Shell Mill Road in Bishopville, Maryland after Bonnie called 911 to report that her boyfriend had been shot. When officers arrived, they entered the premises and found David lying on the floor, unresponsive with a gunshot wound. Medics pronounced him dead at the scene. During the investigation, authorities identified Bonnie as a suspect in David's death and arrested her. She's charged with first and second degree murder, first and second degree assault, and other firearm-related charges. She remains held at the Worcester County Jail without bond. The motive of the killing is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. On Friday the 9th of May, authorities arrested 35-year-old Donnie Edwin Fonville of Leonard, Texas, on 4 counts of indecency with a child. The incidents allegedly occurred late last year and early this year. The Fannin County Sheriff's Office said that investigators found that Donnie had been involved with activities that presented him with easy access to young children, and that he reportedly coached girls softball at the Trenton Youth Sports Association until his arrest. Donnie's currently being held at the Fannin County Jail on a $300,000 bond. The Sheriff's Office said it does not believe there's any ongoing threat to the general public, but noted the investigation is open and active. A 24-year-old man will spend the rest of his life behind bars for fatally shooting his pregnant girlfriend and causing the death of their baby several months later. On Friday the 9th of May 2025, a jury in DeKalb County, Georgia found Diamante Haithcoats guilty of malice murder, 2 counts of felony murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony in connection to the 2023 deaths of his girlfriend, 20-year-old Shania Rodriguez, and the baby Milani Rodriguez. A judge sentenced Diamante to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. At around 5:45 a.m. on the 2nd of February 2023, authorities responded to a condominium complex at 6601 Singleton Lane in Clarkston, Georgia, after residents reported hearing gunshots. When officers arrived, they found Shania in a critical condition lying in the parking lot on the ground outside with a gunshot wound to the head. Investigators later recovered 7 shell casings at the scene. Shania, who was 7 months pregnant with Diamante's child, was rushed to hospital. Doctors performed an emergency cesarean to deliver the baby. Shania died 2 days later, and her daughter died on the 19th of June 2023. A witness told police that a dark-coloured SUV drove away from the scene shortly after hearing the gunshots. Police obtained license plate reader footage from the area and saw a dark blue Hyundai Palisade leaving the complex at around 5:46 a.m. Authorities found the Palisade days after the shooting and determined it had been stolen. Investigators determined that Shania's phone had been connected to the vehicle's Bluetooth just minutes before the 911 call. Detectives turned on her phone and it was automatically connected to the Palisade. Digital evidence also revealed that Diamante's phone was left at the complex following Shania's fatal shooting. Diamante was identified as a suspect in the shooting, and a warrant for his arrest was issued. On the 27th of February 2023, authorities located Diamante outside a barber shop along Memorial Drive in Decatur and he was arrested. When police spoke to Diamante, he tried to downplay the extent of his relationship with Shania and wouldn't admit to living with her or fathering her child. In the days leading up to her death, Shania told a friend that her relationship with Diamante had started to deteriorate and she feared for her safety while in a relationship with him. Authorities are investigating a homicide following the fatal shooting of a 23-year-old woman. At 10:41 a.m. on Sunday the 11th of May, authorities responded to the 4100 block of Mount Wood Road in Baltimore, Maryland on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found an unresponsive woman laying in the back of a white Acura with multiple gunshot wounds. Medics attempted life-saving measures and transported her to a hospital, where she was pronounced dead. The woman was identified as 23-year-old Tanya Gray, and her death was ruled a homicide. One resident reportedly called 911 after hearing gunshots and discovered that a vehicle had rolled into a parked car. When she looked inside the car, she found Tanya's body. Detectives canvassed the area and interviewed potential witnesses as they worked to determine a motive. Tanya was a mother of a young girl and was killed on her birthday, which happened to coincide with Mother's Day. No arrests have been made as the investigation into the matter continues. 21-year-old Nashawn Ware has been arrested after an accidental shooting killed 22-year-old Tarjanae Stevens. At around 3:15 p.m. on Saturday the 10th of May, authorities responded to a residence in the 7900 block of South Essex Avenue in Chicago, Illinois on reports of a person shot. When officers arrived, they found Tarjanae deceased with a gunshot wound to her head. Nashawn, who lived in the unit, was at the scene and indicated that he was a participant in Tarjanae's death. He told investigators that they were playing around with a gun when it suddenly went off. Nashawn was arrested and charged with involuntary manslaughter. He was also charged with obstruction of justice for hiding a gun which police recovered at the scene. Nashawn appeared in the Cook County courtroom where the judge sent him home on electronic monitoring with a daily curfew. A St. Louis, Missouri woman faces serious charges after causing a multi-vehicle crash while intoxicated and abandoning her two injured children. At around 7 a.m. on Monday the 12th of May, Courtney Brown abruptly stopped in the middle of Interstate 270 near Missouri 367 when a motorist behind sideswiped a vehicle in the attempt to swerve out of the way. The driver who struck Courtney's car stopped and walked to the woman's vehicle, where she found the woman's two children aged 3 and 8 sitting unrestrained in the passenger seat. A second vehicle then collided with Courtney's vehicle, sending it careening across the highway and into a third oncoming car. As officers arrived on scene, Courtney proceeded to walk away from the crash site despite orders to return. First responders found the two children unconscious and suffering serious injuries, lying across the center console, and they rushed to hospital where they remain intubated. A Missouri state trooper detained Courtney about a mile from the scene of the accident and noticed that she had a relaxed demeanor, slow deliberate movements, watery and bloodshot eyes, and confused speech. She was taken to a nearby hospital where cannabis and amphetamines were found in her system. Courtney was arrested and charged with 2 counts of driving while under the influence with serious injury, 3 counts of leaving the scene of an accident, 1 count of operating a vehicle on a highway without a valid license, and 2 counts of child welfare endangerment. She was booked into the St. Louis County Jail, but has since posted a $100,000 bond. Her preliminary hearing is scheduled for the 2nd of June. 34-year-old Jacqueline Popeberry is behind bars for setting a homeless woman on fire. At around 9:30 p.m. on Saturday the 26th of April, authorities responded to the area of 17th Avenue and Stockton Boulevard in South Sacramento, California, on a report of a woman who had been set on fire. When officers arrived on scene, they found the victim, a 49-year-old homeless woman suffering from severe burns. Fire department personnel transported the victim to hospital. The victim had burns to approximately a third of her body, including her face, torso, arms and back. Once at the hospital, she was intubated for several days, where she was unable to speak or provide a statement. Officers interviewed several witnesses at the scene who saw the incident and helped extinguish the victim when she was on fire. During the investigation, detectives identified 34-year-old Jacqueline Popeberry as the suspect. After reviewing surveillance video and speaking to witnesses, they learned that Jacqueline drove to where the victim had set up to sleep for the night and began a verbal argument. She then threw an unknown liquid believed to be a fire accelerant onto the victim, then set her on fire. Bystanders helped to put out the fire when Jacqueline began to kick the victim before fleeing in the vehicle. On Tuesday the 13th of May, detectives were able to finally speak with the victim, who positively identified Jacqueline as her assailant. Authorities said that the two women knew each other, but Jacqueline was not experiencing homelessness. The Sacramento Police Department said that Jacqueline has since been arrested for an unrelated robbery charge and that detectives had booked her for felony charges of attempted murder and arson related to the fire attack. She remains held at the Sacramento County Jail on a $400,000 bond. 40-year-old Sarah Elizabeth Lee is behind bars for assaulting a man. At around 11:55 p.m. on Sunday the 11th of May, authorities responded to a residence on B. Clark Road in Gainesville, Georgia on reports of domestic violence. When officers arrived, they found a male victim with an injury to his forehead. Authorities said that Sarah punched the victim, then grabbed him around the neck from behind, choking him until he briefly lost consciousness. Emergency medical personnel evaluated the victim, but he refused transport to a hospital. Sarah was arrested and charged with felony aggravated assault and misdemeanor battery. She remains held at the Hall County Jail without bond. 33-year-old Drew Garnier will spend 3 decades behind bars for killing his pregnant wife, 29-year-old Samantha Garnier, and injuring his 2 daughters. On the 13th of May 2025, Drew appeared at the Delaware County Court in New York, where a judge sentenced him to 30 years in prison, followed by 15 years of post-release supervision. He previously pleaded guilty in March to first-degree manslaughter and 2 counts of first-degree assault. At 11:29 p.m. on the 4th of September 2024, authorities responded to a home on Halk Road in Masonville, New York on report of a domestic dispute. When officers arrived, they entered the premises and found Samantha, who was 5 months pregnant, unresponsive with multiple stab wounds. Medics rendered aid and she was airlifted to a hospital, where she and her unborn daughter died. Drew's 2 daughters, aged 6 and 9, were also transported to a hospital with stab injuries but survived. Drew later admitted to stabbing his wife and 2 daughters inside their home. During Drew's sentencing, Samantha's father made an impact statement and said he believed the murders had been motivated by the gender of the unborn child, saying he wanted a boy. The father also said the girls had been traumatized by the incident, but he has since adopted them. 34-year-old Michael James Jordan has been charged in a quadruple homicide. At just after 6:45 p.m. on the 4th of April, authorities responded to a mobile home along the 1000 block of Gaines Drive in Perry, Georgia to complete a welfare check following a disturbance and found 4 people dead inside. The victims spanned 4 generations and were identified as 82-year-old Beulah Robinson, her daughter 51-year-old Michelle Joyner, granddaughter 37-year-old Taekwondo Robinson, and 2-year-old Alea Joyner. An autopsy determined that 3 of the victims were stabbed and 1 was suffocated. Authorities identified Michael as a person of interest in the case on the 17th of April. Family members said that Michael dated one of the women and briefly lived inside the home. Authorities said that Michael was originally arrested on separate charges shortly after the killing, including drug charges and aggravated stalking charge, and he's been in custody since his arrest on the night of the 4th of April. On Thursday the 15th of May, Michael was additionally charged with 4 counts of murder and aggravated assault among other charges. He remains held at the Houston County Jail without bond. 32-year-old Jenna Winhow killed a woman and injured 2 others after she drove at 102 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour zone. On Saturday the 10th of May, authorities responded to 911 calls involving a multi-vehicle crash in the 4300 block of North 76th Street in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. One of the callers told the dispatcher that the crash involved 3 cars, and one of them was split in half, while another caller said the crash involved a rollover, and someone had been ejected from one of the vehicles. Authorities said that the 3 vehicles involved were a Jeep Wrangler, a Chevrolet Traverse, and a Jeep Patriot. The investigation revealed that the Jeep Wrangler, driven by Jenna, drove at a very high rate of speed and into the back of the Chevrolet, which was driven by Tonya Missouri Smith, who died from the injuries in the crash. Her son, who was also in the vehicle, suffered hip pain. Officials said that the Chevrolet was pushed into the back of the Jeep Patriot. The person who was in the Patriot, which ended up on its side, suffered a fractured vertebrae and was taken to hospital for treatment. An autopsy determined that Tonya's cause of death was multiple blunt force injuries consistent with a vehicular crash, including facial lacerations, brain bleeding, a severed spinal cord, and fractures to every one of her ribs as well as her sternum and pelvis. She also lacerated her aorta, lungs, liver, spleen, and intestines. Tonya's son told authorities that his mother was driving west and in the process of turning right when they were struck from behind. While at the scene, police said that Jenna opened the door to a squad car unprompted and sat in the back, and appeared to be falling asleep in the back while waiting for police. When the officer noticed what was happening and approached his car, Jenna allegedly confessed to driving the Jeep Wrangler that caused the crash, saying, "Take me to jail. I crashed that car and did I kill anybody?" Jenna was arrested and charged with 1 count of first-degree reckless homicide and 2 counts of first-degree recklessly endangering safety. On Thursday the 15th of May, she made her initial appearance in the Milwaukee County Court where a cash-only bond of $40,000 was set. She's currently being held in the Milwaukee County Jail. A 25-year-old man is behind bars for fatally shooting a 34-year-old man. At around 3:50 p.m. on Wednesday the 14th of May, authorities responded to 250 South Main Street in Spartanburg, South Carolina on reports of shots fired. Upon arrival, officers discovered an unresponsive man with multiple gunshot wounds lying along the side of the house across the street from where the shooting was reported. Medics arrived shortly thereafter and pronounced him dead. The victim was identified as 34-year-old Tyrese Eugene Irvin. The suspect, 25-year-old Dante Keyshawn Elliott, was located at the scene, and when approached he told deputies he had shot the victim and that the gun he used was on the floorboard of a car nearby. Dante was arrested and charged with murder and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime and remains held at the Spartanburg County Jail with bond denied. Investigators said they believed Dante and Tyrese knew each other, though a clear motive has not yet been established. Authorities said that this was not a random act. We're continuing to investigate the relationship between the two individuals and what led to this deadly outcome. The incident is being treated as a targeted act of violence. A school crossing guard in Altoona, Pennsylvania is behind bars after a 15-year-old girl came forward about him repeatedly assaulting her in his garage last year. On the morning of Wednesday the 14th of May 2025, 73-year-old Ronald Richard Rossman was arraigned in the Blair County Court on multiple charges including rape. On the 20th of August 2024, authorities were called to the UPMC hospital in Altoona for a report of a past assault. When they arrived, they found a 15-year-old victim and her mother. The teen identified Ronald as the suspect, saying they were neighbours and she knew him as a school crossing guard. Officers noted that the teen, who has developmental delays, had difficulty understanding certain aspects of the officers' questions. However, family service advocates were able to help. The teen explained that on the 23rd of July, she went for a walk and saw Ronald outside. She then stopped to see if there were any chores she could help him with. The teen said that Ronald took her to a garage and locked the door behind them. He then forced himself on her and assaulted her in the bed of his truck inside. She told police she tried to kick him away but couldn't. Police learned this happened multiple times, with the most recent incident happening on the 12th of August 2024. She described other incidents where he used a candlestick on her and forced her to perform acts on him. Investigators learnt that Ronald had allegedly made the teen take a pregnancy test. The teen then sent the photo of it to her mother, ultimately leading her questioning her daughter and discovering what happened. Police spoke to Ronald at the Altoona police station, where he said that the teen would often stop by and do chores like weeding in the yard. Ronald denied the allegations and accused the girl of being promiscuous and exposing herself to him. He admitted to buying a pregnancy test, claiming the girl insinuated she was pregnant. He wanted them to explain that they would play around and smack each other's butts. Investigators noted that he claimed he never let the teen in his garage because he didn't want anyone to think something was going on, then contradicted the statement by saying there were times that they were in the garage together. In the garage, police found various items that were described by the victim, such as lotions, marijuana, a candlestick and alcohol. Police said that the victim's DNA was also found in several areas around the garage, including a folding table which she alleged she was assaulted on. Ronald was arrested and placed into the Blair County Jail with bail set at $250,000. A preliminary hearing is scheduled for the 28th of May. Ronald's status with the school district as a crossing guard is currently unknown. 22-year-old Nathan Lee Bridges is behind bars after police found a toddler injured inside a home. On the 1st of May, authorities responded to the 1000 block of Ellsworth Avenue in Columbus, Ohio to check on the well-being of the juvenile after receiving a 911 call. Arriving officers learnt that a 2-year-old boy was left at the house the previous night by Nathan. The juvenile had significant external injuries and was taken to the Nationwide Children's Hospital for treatment. The boy had bruising scattered all over his body, a liver laceration and fractures to his spine and jaw. Authorities said that the injuries were potentially life-altering. Investigators said that Ava Himmelwright, a friend of the boy's mother who made the 911 call, said that Nathan had dropped the child off after stating that the mother was arrested earlier that evening. Nathan told Ava he was dropping off the child because he didn't know how to change diapers. Ava reportedly asked Nathan twice about the boy's visible injuries, and he pretended not to hear the question. Detectives interviewed the mother of the child, who confirmed she had left him in Nathan's care, and that her son was happy when she left for the evening. Authorities said that Nathan did not attempt to contact or seek help for the child. On the 13th of May, SWAT officers arrested Nathan without incident. He is charged with endangering children and he's held at the Fairfield County Jail on a $500,000 bond. Authorities said that the child remains at hospital and is now showing signs of improvement. The relationship between Nathan and the mother and child is unclear, as investigation into the matter continues.